Encounter with Ancient Egypt. My Horus, this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176 Veil. As Amos said, the next morning, at daybreak, the young prince, accompanied by the most famous Akaba in the kingdom, knocked on the gate of Rhea Manor. Several tall horses pulled chariots one after another, pulling wooden boxes full of gold and silver jewelry, perfumed jewelry, and rare toys from foreign countries. At the end of the team, there were even two pygmies from the south. They were not toys or sculptures, but living creatures who could sing, juggle, and dance. This scene couldn't be bigger. Horses were creatures that ordinary people couldn't even see, but there were so many of them here. They were not of mixed colors, but pure white horses without a single stray hair on their bodies, and with tall gold-studded ostrich feathers on their heads, looking very majestic. This scale of engagement ceremony had never been seen before in Kemet. It could be said that it was much more grand than the one his father Amos had held. After all, Amos had only married his sister, and not many people in the royal family knew about it. Judging from this posture alone, His Highness Amónhotep must have loved his future wife very much. A large number of civilians gathered beside the convoy at the entrance of the manor. They gathered together and whispered, "I wonder which young lady in Lord Rhea's family won this honor. Doesn't Lord Rhea have only one daughter? Who else could it be except Melitamen? Go, Melitamen is impossible, right? Didn't someone say before that Melitamen was the fiancée of His Highness Sepal? Although His Highness has now gone to immortality, she can't marry her brother so soon, right? She is not a royal family. If it was a royal family, it would be possible to do so for the sake of accumulating benefits, but Melitamen is not a royal family, and she is not so outstanding. I really can't see how she attracted the favor of such an outstanding His Highness Amónhotep. No matter how I look at it, it's impossible." "You don't know this," one of the onlookers said mysteriously, winking. "Hurry up and tell me, don't hesitate here." The people around urged, "This Lord Rhea has another daughter, who is 18 years old this year." The man continued. Lord Rhea actually has a daughter? She's already this old? Does his family have any explanation? Why do girls get married so late? This person said that in Kemet, girls usually get married at the age of 11 or 12, and it is rare for them to not get married at the age of 18. It is already outrageous that Melitamen from the Rhea family did not get married at the age of 18, so how could there be another one hidden? My wife's sister used to work as a temporary worker in Lord Rhea's manor. She has seen that other lady. Tisk tisk, she is not at all like this Melitamen." The man smacked his lips while speaking, clearly trying to whet people's appetite. "Tell me quickly. How is that lady different?" "Well, I'm a little thirsty." The man rolled his eyes and said again, "Oh. Here you go." The drink was handed over, and the man took a sip with satisfaction, then looked at the closed manor door. "That lady is really beautiful, and is not inferior to the princess who is famous for her beauty in the shrine." He sighed. "Nonsense. I have seen Her Majesty Amónhotep. It is not an exaggeration to say that she is a goddess from heaven. Her Majesty Amónhotep is the goddess in my heart forever. How can anyone compare with her?" "That's right. If you don't mention anything else, just look at Melitamen's small eyes and that crooked waist. If the elder sister looks like this, how can the younger sister be any better? Don't believe it? That lady and Melitamen are not born to the same mistress. She is so beautiful. Then think about Lord Rhea. Just with Lord Rhea's face, how can his daughter be ugly? Besides, if she is really ugly, can she win the favor of His Majesty Amónhotep?" He chuckled and stopped talking. The onlookers looked at each other, and Rhea's face, which was still charming even in middle age, appeared in their minds, and they fell into deep thought. A pair of alabaster stone ornaments, a box of lapis lazuli jewelry, 2 boxes of gold ingots, a box of silver ingots, 2 strings of chalcedony beads, a necklace inlaid with red agate, 10 haggets of new wheat. The ceremonial officer stood in the middle of the courtyard and read the list of items aloud. Every time he read a name, the guard would move the corresponding item to Rhea. This list of things was obviously quite large, and it piled up like a high wall in front of Rhea. Its value exceeded the total of his salary over the years. But he didn't seem very happy, and his face was always long. His unhappiness could be felt from a distance. This pile of things was almost equivalent to the betrothal gift in China, but it was not. Except for a small part given to Rhea, the father-in-law, the rest were private property for the bride. Lin Ya almost became a top rich man who surpassed her father in one day. Aqaba was full of smiles and boasted to Rhea about how outstanding His Highness Amónhotep was and how honored it was to marry his daughter, but he never made Rhea smile. I can't help but wipe a cold sweat in my heart. Tata is the most famous Aqaba in the country. She has been a matchmaker for at least 10,000 people, but she has never seen such an unreasonable parent. It is said that His Highness Amónhotep is the best in terms of family, character, and appearance. Why is Rhea so unhappy no matter how he looks at him? This is not good. What kind of son-in-law does he want? All the items have been listed and piled up in half of the front yard. Melita looked at it with red eyes behind the grape trellis. How can such a good marriage not be hers? But there is no point in thinking about it now. Tia is the person specifically designated by His Highness, and the wedding will be in a few days. How can she make trouble? She gritted her teeth in hatred, and simply walked back to the room with her feet stomping, and stopped looking. My lord, it's time to sign the marriage certificate. It has come to this stage, but Rhea has no intention of moving. The housekeeper is secretly anxious and whispered a reminder. Rhea remained silent, looking at the things piled on the ground. The breath emanating from his body was getting colder and colder, almost freezing people. He made a face expression, but Amónhotep looked very good. Although he wore a veil, he could still see the smile from his brown eyes. He was going to get engaged, one step closer to marriage. How could he not be happy? Your Highness, after today, I will be your father-in-law. On such an important day, you don't even show your face. Is this impolite? Rhea said coldly. He had long disliked Amónhotep. Not only was he rude, but he even wore a veil on occasions like today. What does this mean? Why didn't he wear a veil on ordinary days? Why did he choose today? Lord Rhea, you are overthinking. It's just that I accidentally bumped my face yesterday. I can't see anyone now. I don't mean to be dissatisfied with this marriage. Amónhotep curled his eyes, his tone quite helpless. Time is so tight, this is also the only way. Who doesn't want to hold an engagement ceremony in a grand manner? Didn't he get beaten by his father? The mark from the ointment box yesterday has not yet subsided, and the blood has spread, blue and purple, and it is obvious that he can't see anyone. Did he have to let so many people see his disfigured face when he walked all the way without a veil? It's your business whether your Highness is careless, but this attitude towards marriage is not okay. Rhea was indifferent, with a stern face and not looking at the housekeeper's eyes, and said to himself, the marriage certificate has not been signed, and I am not your son-in-law yet. Amónhotep said with a smile, without signing the marriage certificate, the kinship between the two families has not been established. You are still just my subject, a higher-level servant. How can you have the right to control whether your master wears a veil? The naming is useless. The naming is useless. Chapter 177 Marriage Certificate. In the 24th year of His Majesty Amos, on the 25th day of the 4th month of Shemuj, His Highness Amónhotep, son of His Majesty Amos, the son of the god Amon, signed a prenuptial contract with the Minister of Finance, Rhea. Tia, the daughter of Rhea, who combines the beauty of both places, is both virtuous and talented, and is favored by the goddess Hathor. Now she is specially betrothed to His Highness Amónhotep, who is forever illuminated by the glory of the sun god. The two families will be forever united. He will treat her like a pearl and jade, and dedicate all the beauty in the world to her, forever sincere, forever loving. The ceremonial officer placed a marriage certificate on the stone table, and Rhea walked forward and picked it up with his hands. He read it out word by word. The gloom in Rhea's eyes became more and more intense. After a long time, he put down the marriage certificate and looked at Amónhotep standing beside him. Forever sincere. Forever loving. Is that your promise? He sneered. A member of the royal family told him that he would love his daughter forever. What an ironic joke. How could a member of the royal family be sincere? How much is this sincerity worth? Yes, this is my promise. I love her. I will do what I say. The young man's voice was low, and his eyes were full of determination. Then how do you explain this? Rhea smiled and used his knuckles to emphasize a line of words on the marriage certificate. The sentence was, I am now betrothed to His Highness Amónhotep, who is forever illuminated by the glory of the sun god. There was a small blank at the end of this sentence. According to convention, it would usually be marked here whether it was the main wife or the concubine. But at this moment, there was nothing here. What did this mean? It needs to be examined? His daughter was sent to someone else's home. In the end, she didn't even have a name, not even a concubine. Rhea, it's not what you think. Amónhotep frowned and tried to explain. You know, Ya's status is not enough to be my main wife. Not enough to be the main wife? But you can see clearly, there is not only the main wife, but also no concubine. Rhea shouted with strong anger, listen to my explanation. Amónhotep pressed his forehead. Rhea's reaction was far from what he imagined. He didn't like Rhea very much when he first met him. This had a lot to do with the rumors about Rhea. He thought Rhea didn't care much about Ya. Later, after the conversation on the sacred ship, he knew that Rhea was just an ordinary father. But he really didn't expect Rhea's reaction to be so big. Okay, you explain. Rhea sneered. I will only marry Ya. This is the agreement between me and my father, Amos. 1 year later, if Ya can give birth to heir, I will be allowed to have only her as my wife. Before that, all her treatment will be the same as that of the main wife. Amónhotep slowed down his tone and spoke slowly. He knew that all this was unreasonable, but there was nothing he could do. If he filled in the title of main wife now, his father would not agree. If he filled in the title of concubine, it would be too unfair to Ya. After weighing the pros and cons, it could only be like this. The title of main wife would only be postponed to next year. Do you think this is fair to my daughter? Rhea still refused to accept it, and the sarcasm in her words became stronger and stronger. My daughter was sent to the royal family, but she is not even married. What is this? He picked up the marriage certificate with gold edges and shook it twice. A reproductive tool under review. Rhea, you clearly know that this is not what you mean. Why are you still so sarcastic? Amónhotep ruthlessly exposed the resistance behind Rhea's words. He was not only resisting this marriage certificate. Even if it clearly stated the main wife, his answer would probably still be against it. He was resisting this marriage in general. He didn't want Ya to marry him. Why? Amónhotep couldn't figure it out. He couldn't figure it out at all. What's wrong with his daughter marrying into the royal family? Or, what's wrong with marrying himself? Why did he refuse again and again, and regret it in the last seemingly loose conversation? This marriage has already passed my father's eyes. I advise you to think it over and don't make such unnecessary resistance anymore. A good thing has been made so ugly by you. Have you asked Ya's opinion? He frowned and said to Rhea seriously. I will treat Ya well, 1,000 times and 10,000 times better than you did. No, you have never done anything for Ya. If she marries me, I will only give her back double what she has lost and what she has not gained. Will you really treat her well forever? After a long time, Rhea raised her head from silence and looked straight at Amónhotep, with a doubt in her eyes almost solidified. I will. No matter what happens, will you never betray her? Yes. If one day she is not tolerated by the kingdom, will you stand against the kingdom for her? I won't. Amónhotep did not hesitate at all and said directly, I will be the head of a country first, and then her husband. I think I have answered this question for you. I can't abandon the entire kingdom for my personal feelings, but I can guarantee that if she dies, she will never be alone. I will accompany her and will never let her feel lonely, and I will never let her feel betrayed. Such an answer obviously cannot satisfy Rhea, but it is the best answer Amónhotep can give. He is not an ordinary person. The survival of the kingdom depends on his thoughts. It is good that he can say this. Swear an oath. Rhea picked up a long feather pen on the palette and played with it back and forth in his hand. The feathers on it changed from gathering to strands. I never believe in God. Amónhotep said lightly, but I believe that there are gods in this world, and gods will punish those who are not honest with him. Rhea said coldly. In this case, I will swear an oath. Amónhotep smiled lightly and agreed very readily. Perhaps for people with faith, swearing is something that is easy to believe, but if the other party is a person without faith, what is the point? However, if he did this, he could make Rhea feel at ease and let him betroth Ya to him without any scruples. Then he would also believe that there are really gods in this world, and there is a God to prove that every word he said comes from the heart. I, Amónhotep, son of Amos, son of the great god Amon, swear my oath here to the invisible Amon. I will do everything I said to Rhea today. If not, I am willing to accept the most severe punishment from the god Amon. Amónhotep finished speaking and raised his eyebrows to look at Rhea on the side. Are you satisfied with this? Oh, satisfied. Rhea smiled and then stopped answering. He had already forced a prince into this state. What else could he be dissatisfied with? The slender feather pen was dipped in rich paint, and he raised his hand to leave his name on the marriage certificate. Rhea, the father of Jehsekhara, Rhea. The red paint left a father's uneasy heart. He could not foresee his daughter's future, but he could feel the sincere heart of this young man. His daughter's life experience was a powerful bomb, and he didn't know what would happen in the future. But now, she was willing, and this young man was willing too. Just like the young moments he had had, Harry held his hand, and he felt that everything was hopeful and possible. May the invisible and omnipresent God Amon protect this pair of lovers, and may his daughter get the happiness she wants. Rhea's name has been signed. The ceremonial officer wiped the sweat from his forehead and pushed the marriage certificate to Amónhotep's side. The young man smiled and stroked every word on the marriage certificate with his fingers. During the ceremony of signing the marriage certificate, the bride cannot be seen, but through such a thin piece of paper, he seemed to see the person he loved so much. The red pen was raised and fell. He wrote his own name that he had written countless times, Amónhotep, son of Amos, Amónhotep. From now on, he will also be the husband of Jehsekhara, Amónhotep. Rhea, I'm so angry, he took my daughter away! Exclamation mark. The pig dug up my cabbage! Exclamation mark. Amos, what did you say? Amónhotep is a pig? Then what am I? Exclamation mark. Chapter 178 Deliver it. The marriage certificate has been signed. Shouldn't you leave now? Rhea looked at Amónhotep with a bad face. After signing their respective names, it can be said that from this moment on, the girl has become a member of someone else's family, but there has not been an open wedding yet. The engagement ceremony has come to an end, and Rhea began to drive people away without mercy. He really didn't want to see the boy in front of him for a minute. He felt sad when he thought that his daughter would become someone else's wife in the future. Although he deliberately ignored Jehsekhara over the years, she was the only flesh and blood of him and Herod after all. How could he bear to marry her off like this? The marriage certificate has been signed. Lord Rhea, just call me by my name. Amónhotep didn't seem to hear his intention to drive people away, and said with a smile, Okay, Your Highness Amónhotep, you should leave now. Rhea took a deep breath and continued to drive people away. Uncle, you are joking. Isn't there a final banquet at the engagement ceremony? I know this etiquette. I will stay to enjoy the dinner. Amónhotep raised the corner of his lips slightly, not giving way, and climbed up a little, calling him uncle. The eyes of the two met in the air, colliding with crackling fire. If eyes could kill, Rhea thought, this bastard must have died 1,000 times. It's like this. I think as the regent prince, you must have a lot of things to do. How can I let such a small thing as eating trip you up? Nothing, I'm not busy today, and even if I'm really busy, I must attend the engagement dinner. Amónhotep's eyebrows moved, and he remained calm. That's really unfortunate. My cook is not feeling well today. There is no food for you to eat, so go back to where you came from. It doesn't matter. This is my engagement dinner after all. I believe my father will be willing to send the royal cook in the palace to prepare it. Amónhotep looked into Rhea's eyes and emphasized, the host and the guests will enjoy themselves. The old fox is not easy to fool. He gave birth to a little fox with such sharp teeth. Lin Ya snorted. Now that he had come to this point, he had to stay even if he didn't want to. Then please arrange it. You're welcome. This is my engagement dinner. It's my job. Amónhotep used the phrase of taking advantage of others to the fullest. He knew that Rhea didn't want to hear the word engagement, but he kept mentioning it in his ears, which made Rhea so angry that he fell backwards. Excuse me, can I go see my bride-to-be now? He asked with a smile. Meeting is not allowed before signing the marriage certificate, because it is necessary to highlight the father's dominance over his daughter's marriage. In Kemet, under normal circumstances, the groom must show his sincerity and ask for permission from the bride's father before he is allowed to talk about the marriage. But Amónhotep obviously skipped the step of asking. He wanted his bride, and all he needed was a notification. The signing of the marriage certificate was enough to make Rhea unhappy. This little fox asked to see his daughter right away? Then go, Your Highness, watch your step. Don't fall, and the other half of your face will also be bruised. Okay, thank you for your concern. Amónhotep nodded and walked towards the backyard while laughing. The happy atmosphere emanating from his body and the brisk steps under his feet, Anyone who saw it would know that he must be in a very good mood at the moment. He walked in one direction without anyone guiding him, and walked through several winding paths and covered grape racks during the journey. He was familiar with the way as if he had been here thousands or tens of thousands of times. This obviously made Rhea even more upset. He couldn't keep his daughter when she was grown up. You little fox. How many times have you come to my house when I didn't know? Ow. It went very smoothly. How could it not go smoothly? Amónhotep smiled, then hugged her tighter with his backhand, and breathed deeply into her neck. Well, it has been 16 hours since he last saw her. Her body fragrance lingered around his nose, which was a light fragrance, completely different from the strong incense. Yeah, his yeah, from this moment on, she really belonged to him completely. What's wrong with you? Didn't you sleep well last night? After a long time, he let go of her waist, stroked her obviously haggard face with his fingers, and asked with concern. Well, it's not, I just got up a little early. Lin Ya sulked and answered honestly. Engagement is such a solemn event, even if Rhea doesn't care, he still has to be prepared. Early this morning, it was really early in the morning. It was still dark when a figure began to walk back and forth, repeatedly cleaning and tidying up the manor. She couldn't sleep well even if she wanted to. Now, all the steps have been completed, and the time is only about 8 o'clock. In fact, even if there is no noise from people walking around, she can't sleep well. Lin Ya is like this. She has a characteristic. Whenever there is an event on the next day, she will not sleep well all night. From time to time, she will get up and ask what time it is. Regarding this, Ipt is deeply affected. She had as much trouble sleeping as Lin Ya did yesterday. However, her mental state is not bad. She is not as obviously haggard as Lin Ya. After all, she is a servant and has long been accustomed to this kind of life state of being on call at any time. What about you? Why are you wearing a veil? Lin Ya yawned and realized this. Huh? Why is he wearing a veil? Like a modern Arab woman, except that he didn't cover his head. The long veil passed behind his ears and tied into a knot. Only a pair of eyes were exposed on his small face, which made his eyebrows look even darker and his eyelashes look even thicker. Aren't you hot? She reached out and sat down to untie the knot behind his head. It would be hot in a while and he would sweat. Don't untie it. Amónhotep held her hand to stop her movement, and kissed her lightly through the veil. The wound on his face was very horrifying. He didn't want her to worry about him after seeing it. She would definitely feel distressed. Besides, she was beaten like this by her father because of her marriage. There are some things that he alone should know. Lin Ya tilted her head and smiled softly, put her head on his shoulder, and breathed softly into his ear. Tell me, if you are bitten by a mosquito, is it more comfortable to scratch through the clothes or lift up the clothes? The red cloud climbed up to the tip of the boy's ear. Amónhotep was rarely stunned for a moment, and then realized that his Yea had learned bad things and learned to tease people. Tell me, which way of tickling is more comfortable? Lin Ya smiled and stretched out her hand to the back of his head. Don't untie it. The poor prince's voice became much smaller when he was teased by her, and he looked pitiful. Are you ordering me? She bit the boy's ear gently through the veil. Poor little Amónhotep, I suspect my Yea has been replaced. Biting the handkerchief, Lin Ya, don't you like it? Picking chin, aggrieved Amónhotep, I like it. Chapter 179 The Way of Kissing. The boy's back stiffened because of her deliberate teasing. Lin Ya stroked his waist with her hand like a satisfied hooligan. You haven't answered my question yet, she insisted, rubbing his neck repeatedly. Lift up your clothes for more comfort. Amónhotep felt that his brain was filled with paste instead of brain matter. Damn it, why did he feel so thirsty now? I want to drink water, he said dryly. Ipt, go get him a glass of water. Lin Ya smiled amusedly and shouted. Tisk, is Aksha so innocent? Why did he take it for granted when he teased her before? She stretched out a finger and touched Amónhotep's delicate chin little by little. Yes, so I like your lips more than your veil. The body under her palm became more tense. She turned her face sideways and wrapped her arms around his neck like a plant without roots. Her rosy lips gently touched the corners of his lips. Even through a layer of veil, the soft touch and sweet breath made Amónhotep feel more uncomfortable. She paused on his lips for a moment, then stood up and left, leaving a slightly yellowish and reddish lip outline on the white veil. Then she used her fingers to rub that area and spread the color evenly. Tell me, do you like me to kiss you like this, or? Damn it. Before Lin Ya finished her coquettish and seductive words, the young man lifted his veil with one hand, took the initiative, and blocked her lips fiercely with his lips. Forget about reason and veil. He just wanted to kiss her now, just to kiss her hard, to suffocate her, to let her know the consequences of talking to him like this. Long-standing wisdom has proved that no man can resist the teasing of his beloved woman. If there is, then he must not be a man. Amónhotep is a man of blood and vigor. The person in his arms is his legitimate fiancé and the one he loves with all his heart. The veil fluttered in the morning breeze and finally hung on the branches of the grapevine. Lin Ya felt more and more breathless under his attack. She felt that she was the veil fluttering in the wind, which would only rise and fall with the wind, without a future and direction. It was just at this moment that he ended this helpless haven. Until her face turned red due to long-term suffocation, the young man finally kindly let her go. Amónhotep's forehead was against hers, and their breaths could be felt. Stupid, you can't even breathe. His voice was low and sexy. He gritted his teeth and looked at the girl who was breathing heavily, viciously, like an African fox biting the throat of its prey. Let's see if you dare to tease me like this next time. I was wrong. Lin Ya looked at the boy whose eyes were red due to excessive endurance, and swallowed carefully. I was wrong. I will dare to do it next time. Action looks good. This wave is not a loss. I will dare to do it next time. You. Amónhotep was speechless, and his eyes darkened when he was stimulated by her. He picked up her neck like an eagle catching a chick, and put it to his mouth to teach her a lesson again. Lin Ya instinctively shrank back, but was ruthlessly grabbed. No, let her go. The shadow of the boy covered her again, and she was dizzy and confused. Why didn't he get out of breath? The feeling of suffocation came up again, and she heard a weak call. Ipt was holding a drink in his hand, standing in the shadow of the grape trellis. His expression was very hesitant, not knowing whether to leave or stay. Seeing the two people turn their heads, she whispered, Miss, water. Do you want more water? After being caught kissing, Lin Ya immediately pushed him away, feeling extremely embarrassed. She was originally thin-skinned, and she was surrounded by people watching the scene, so she used more force on her hands. Amónhotep was caught off guard and was pushed against the grape trellis. The grape trellis could not bear such a great pressure from him, and it shook violently. It was the grape harvest season, and ripe fruits fell from the branches and hit the corner of his pure white clothes, leaving a little purple mark. He leaned against the layers of leaves, with a satisfied smile on the corner of his mouth. Yes. Bring it. Lin Ya was panicked and didn't know what to say. She spread her palms to it and turned her face to the side. No need. A deep laugh came out of the boy's mouth. Ipt stopped and didn't know who to listen to for a moment. Why don't you drink again? Aren't you thirsty? Lin Ya was confused. Who is this guy? I'm not thirsty, he said with a curved eyebrow, hinting at something. His eyes swept across the corner of her lips and rubbed his lips. Lin Ya felt that her brain was frozen in an instant. She wiped her lips in hatred. The red lips painted in the morning were completely wiped out by her after this, leaving a trace on her palm. The boy laughed softly in the branches and leaves, and it was obvious that he was in a very good mood. Hey. What's wrong with your face? After a brief moment of shame and annoyance, Lin Ya finally remembered the injury on his face and frowned in pain. No wonder he had to wear a veil, it was disfigured. Nothing, I accidentally bumped into it. Amónhotep said indifferently, as if the scar was not a big deal to him at all. He said it easily, but Lin Ya felt her nose a little sour. The bruise was so large and swollen so high. How painful must it have been at that time? Why are you so careless? She walked forward and complained in her low voice. She wanted to touch it with her hand but didn't dare. After thinking for a while, she turned around and ordered Ipt, boil a goose egg for me. Ipt replied and quickly retreated. Amónhotep raised his eyebrows in confusion. Didn't you have breakfast? What time is it? Why do you eat now? I don't eat. You will know in a while. She answered sullenly. Boiled eggs can play a big role in this kind of bruise, but now there are obviously no eggs to boil. The eggs commonly eaten by the Kemet people are nothing more than waterfowl eggs, mostly duck eggs and goose eggs. Those with better conditions may eat ostrich eggs. None of this matters. She thought that if there were no eggs, goose eggs would be almost the same. Even if they were not as good as eggs, they would not be much worse. There were hot things on both sides, which could play a role in warming and activating blood circulation. The goose eggs were quickly brought up in a small basin. I obviously thought the same as Amónhotep, thinking that she was going to eat them herself, and cooked more than 10 of them. Lin Ya rolled her eyes in her heart, thinking that even if I really wanted to eat them, I didn't have to take so many, right? Do you think I am a pig in your mind? The goose eggs that had just come out of the pot were still steaming, and they were so hot that she couldn't care less. It was just that the heat would have a better effect. Lin Ya picked up one with a handkerchief folded 4 times. Even so, it was still so hot that she kept blowing on her fingers. Miss? Wait until it cools down before eating. I advised. No, it's not for eating, it's for rubbing his face. Lin Ya didn't even raise her head. Rubbing his face? The 2 people present were stunned. Cooked goose eggs, rubbing his face? What kind of novel operation is this? Yes. Reduce swelling. I guessed, yes, it can promote blood circulation and reduce swelling, and it can make him heal faster. The hot goose egg fell in her hands several times, knocking against the table with a crisp sound, and a few cracks appeared. Miss, why don't I do it? I suggested. After all, the skin on her hands was much rougher than Lin Ya's, unlike her, which was now a little red from the burn. No need. Lin Ya refused directly. She didn't want others to interfere in taking care of Amónhotep. Goose eggs are much larger than chicken eggs, and the skin is thicker. This time, there were only a few shallow cuts. She knocked it hard on the table again. This time it was obviously in place. The eggshell broke and fell off, revealing the white inner membrane that was tightly attached to the egg white. This egg was obviously newly laid. The inner membrane and egg white were not easy to separate, and a small piece of egg white was brought down from time to time. Lin Ya is a person with obsessive-compulsive disorder. In her eyes, such an egg is an imperfect egg. When she sees an egg with a missing piece, she will immediately replace it with another one. She peeled 5 eggs from a basin of 10 eggs, and finally peeled a perfect whole egg. She gently dragged it with her hands and raised her chin proudly towards Amónhotep. Come here. The transparent goose egg was dragged between her fingers, which made her burned fingers even redder. Here, let me do a little popular science. The lipstick in ancient Egypt was made of red soil, so in addition to red, it was also yellow. I was madly testing the edge of the forbidden. Before I posted it, I cut a few clips and asked my friend if it was sweet. She told me that it was not pure sweet. What should I do? Oh, I like this kind of, and sweet. Chapter 180 Egg. As soon as the egg touched his face, Amónhotep frowned because of the scorching temperature. It was not that he was afraid of heat, but he was worried about Lin Ya's fingers. She had been peeling the egg by herself for so long, and her fingers were all red. Did she feel hot? What's wrong? Is it hot? Lin Ya caught the expression on his face and asked in a low voice. No way? It doesn't feel that hot. No, I think it will hurt you. Amónhotep explained and held her hand. His movement directly twisted Lin Ya's hand and pressed hard on his face. He immediately bared his teeth. Lin Ya was so angry that she didn't dare to touch his injury again. She tapped his forehead with her finger, be honest. After thinking about it, he was also worried about himself, and added, why should I hurt? Don't you feel pain after you hit me like this? She was telling the truth. She was not so stupid to take the egg directly with her hands. The handkerchief wrapped outside was wrapped with 4 layers. It was just that it was not easy to peel the egg just now, so she used her hands. Now it doesn't hurt anymore. Lin Ya looked at him, then at the egg in her hand, and suddenly felt that it was a little hot. After waiting for a while, she felt that it was not so hot anymore, and rolled it onto Amónhotep's cheek again. His scar was quite big, and she didn't know what he had hit. What on earth was he thinking about when he hit such a big thing? What was the use of eyes? He rubbed it and muttered to himself. Amónhotep smiled, feeling the egg rolling gently on his face. Yes, I was thinking about you. He looked at Lin Ya's face, innocently giving her a look. It was true that he had hit something, but it was that thing that hit him. Go away, open your mouth. Lin Ya rolled her eyes. It was such a good time, and she was still so talkative. Why are you opening your mouth? Amónhotep asked in confusion. Let me see your teeth. Teeth. Stop talking nonsense. Open your mouth. Lin Ya said as she directly opened his chin, pinched his cheek and took a good look inside. Well, fortunately, his teeth were not hurt. She thought a little more, thinking that such a big wound would hit the teeth to some extent, and the teeth of the Kemet people were quite bad after all. It may be because they eat bread with sand and gravel all year round. The teeth of the Kemet people rot very quickly. When she was reading relevant books before traveling, she saw the remains of a person's teeth. That thing was really horrifying. If you didn't tell me, you wouldn't know it was a tooth. The whole gum in the middle had been worn away. Several teeth were bare and hanging in the air. Only the long roots and the edges of the gums were slightly attached. Metal wires were used to pierce holes in the middle to bind to other teeth. Amónhotep's teeth grew very well, very white, very neat, and very strong, without any signs of wear. But how to know if his teeth are active? Lin Ya was in a dilemma. He couldn't just stick his finger in there. That would be too. Does your tooth hurt? No. Does the side that was hit feel loose? No? No. Amónhotep said truthfully. He thought Lin Ya was a little stupid. My cheekbone was hit. What does this have to do with teeth? Lin Ya was speechless. This might be because of his concern. He exerted force with his hands and split the goose egg that had just rolled over his face in half and stuffed it into his mouth. Eat the egg. Amónhotep felt like he was going to be petrified. The egg had just rolled over his face, right? Did he just put it in without washing it? Although his face was not dirty, he had been out there for so long, so it was not clean anyway, right? And why did he give her the egg white that rolled over his face? She ate the egg yolk inside? Just thinking about it, he couldn't bite off or swallow the egg white in his mouth. Amónhotep puffed his cheeks and watched Lin Ya eating happily on the side. Why don't you eat? After finishing an egg yolk, Lin Ya felt a little dry in her mouth. She looked up and saw that he had such an expression, feeling a little puzzled. She asked him questions, but it was not easy to answer with something in his mouth, and it was not good to spit it out. He paused, and finally moved his teeth slowly, swallowing the egg white that he couldn't accept bit by bit. His bulging cheeks moved, and half of his face was still swollen, which made him look like a hamster, with a different sense of humor. Lin Ya's eyebrows curved, watching him swallow it with his throat rolling, raised her hand and took out another one from the basin, but before she could take this one out, she heard the boy opposite her spit out 2 syllables with difficulty, which made her movement stop in midair. Not washed? ? What did he say? What's not washed? After a moment of hesitation, he realized that he was talking about the egg white that he had stuffed into his mouth. It seemed that he had not washed it, and it had been rolling on his face for at least 15 minutes. This was embarrassing. Are you still going to eat it? She hesitated, her mouth twitched, and she said something without thinking. Amónhotep paused, then nodded blankly. Eat, Lin Ya said, and divided the egg into 2 halves like the last one, half egg white and half yolk, stuffed the egg white into the boy's mouth, and ate the yolk by himself. The goose egg was very big, and even if it was divided into half, it was still difficult to chew when stuffed into the mouth. Just now there was 1 hamster, and now there are 2. The 2 people sat face to face, their cheeks were bulging, moving. Ip stood aside, disheveled in the wind. She had heard Taiyi talk about His Highness Amónhotep a long time ago. It was said that he was very cold, very smart and sharp, but why did she see something different? Aren't these 2 stupid children? Or does love make people stupid? Lin Ya had just peeled 5 or 6 eggs, and now she broke them one by one and shared them. The 2 of them ate 4 eggs, half for each. She burped and tears welled up in her eyes. Where's Ip's water? She was choked by the egg yolk. She looked really painful as she covered her throat. Amónhotep threw away the egg white in his hand in a panic and patted her back a few times. Lin Ya felt like she was about to fall apart after being patted by him. Is it true that no matter in ancient or modern times, people's first reaction to such a situation is to pat their backs? She hurriedly took the water handed by Ip, raised her head and drank a few big gulps, and then she slowly recovered her breath. I'm choking to death. She took a breath and said faintly. Amónhotep suddenly felt something was wrong. It seemed that he had been eating egg whites while she only ate egg yolks after eating so many eggs. What was the reason for this? If he didn't choke her, who would he choke? Why don't you eat the egg white? Just split it in half. Lin Ya rolled her eyes innocently. Otherwise, I'll give it all to you. Another goose egg was held in front of his eyes, and Amónhotep was speechless. Could he say that he didn't want to eat anymore? Who wouldn't get tired of eating so many eggs in one breath? Not only did he not want to eat today, he never wanted to eat eggs again in the future. I can't eat any more. This was true. He had already eaten breakfast before he came, and now she stuffed him with so many egg whites. He felt that the food was about to surge up his throat, and he couldn't eat another bite. It was just that at the beginning he thought it was Yea who fed him, and she fed him, so he ate, but he didn't expect that he would eat so much. What a sin. He lifted her down from the stool, held her in his arms, and gently tapped her nose. Do you like to eat egg yolks? Well, not that much. Lin Ya replied hesitantly. She was afraid that after she finished talking, there would be endless egg yolks to eat. She actually didn't like to eat egg yolks. Egg yolks were choking and dry. Eating too much would make you want to vomit. Egg whites were much better. It was subconscious, but it was more of a case of giving her what he thought was delicious. Amónhotep knew what was going on when he saw her. What can I say to you? The person in his arms was listless, and she hummed softly when he spoke. He looked down and saw that person's little head was nodding, and his upper and lower eyelids were fighting. The person who was very energetic just now was actually sleepy now. Did she sleep well last night? Afraid of disturbing the person in his arms, he asked, standing aside softly. Yes, Your Highness, the lady almost did not sleep last night. Surprised by his thoughtfulness, also responded in a low voice. The person in his arms did not respond much, obviously she was too sleepy. Amónhotep stroked her hair twice and sighed softly, Go to sleep, I'll watch over you. Chapter 181 Deformation. The woman seemed to have heard his voice, and she mumbled something, then twisted herself in his arms. Her breathing gradually became steady, and she slowly fell asleep. She was already asleep, and Amónhotep held her and stood up. Then he asked beside him, Where does she live? He only saw a sentence in Lin Ya's letter and knew the general direction, but he had never been there and didn't know where she lived. In the deep courtyard, a young man of noble status walked behind a servant with his girl in his arms. The girl's face was rosy and she was sleeping soundly. The young man held her in his arms and walked slowly, fearing that he would wake her up if he moved too much. It was obvious that he loved her very much. There were not many servants passing by on the road, but there were also many. They looked at him with surprised faces and whispered. Although it can be seen from the engagement scene today that His Highness Amónhotep probably likes Mystic Aya very much, but I don't know how he likes her. Could it be that Mystic Aya will really become a very favored queen? One of the sneaky figures looked in this direction for a few times, then retreated and ran away quickly, disappearing into the lush garden. When he approached Lin Ya's residence, Amónhotep frowned. Knowing that she lived in a remote place was one thing, and actually seeing her was another. Can such a remote and old place really be lived in? The white painted mud brick exterior wall was very mottled, revealing the yellow and black mud bricks inside, which were bumpy and obviously had not been repaired for a long time. The yard was bare, without a trace of green, but it was clean and tidy, without any clutter. Rhea, is this how you treat your daughter? Suppressing the anger in his heart, he hugged her and walked into the room. At first glance, the room looked good. The wide drapes divided the room into several parts, fluttering with the wind, adding a sense of romance. Fresh flowers were placed in a vase on the table, fresh and lovely. It can be seen that the decoration was done with care. The furnishings in the room were not made of the finest materials, but they were warm and cozy. I led the people to the second floor, and deftly laid a sheet on the reed mat and placed a soft pillow. Amónhotep put the person down gently, and frowned when he saw the half-worn pillow. The person on the bed turned over uncomfortably, and he finally took the pillow and put it under her head. Her neck was no longer empty, and she slept soundly on the bed. Amónhotep found a stool and sat down beside the bed. Her long eyelashes trembled with her breathing in the sun. The boy greedily stared at her sleeping face, and from time to time he stroked her hair scattered on the pillow with his fingers. The years were quiet and good, and it seemed that if this moment would always stagnate and be still forever, it would not be bad. He thought blankly. Miss, I just saw His Highness Amónhotep personally carrying Mystic Aya back to the room. Militiaman's personal maid rushed in and reported to her what she saw and heard. Got it, Militiaman said listlessly while lying on the bed, as if she was sick. This reaction was different from what the maid expected. In her mind, the lady should be very angry when she heard the news. How could she be so calm? Miss, aren't you angry? The maid said cautiously. Angry? What's the point of me being angry? Militiaman sat up from the bed and pushed the things on hand to the ground with a crackling sound. Fortunately, the floor was covered with fine long pile carpets, so the decorations were not smashed to pieces. She is the fiancée of His Majesty Amónhotep. Didn't you hear? Miss, I was outside the manor this morning and heard the onlookers talking about you, Miss Ya. The maid hesitated and stole a glance at Militiman's reaction. What did you say? Just say it if you have something to say. Militiman said angrily. If you only heard the first half of the words, it would not be a good thing, but she just wanted to listen. Miss, I'd better not say anything. What they said is too much? The maid hesitated. As soon as she finished speaking, Militiman was immediately furious. What does too ugly mean? What did those country folk say to her? Too ugly? If you have something to say it quickly. Don't force me to do it. She shouted, picked up an alabaster ornament standing on the side, and smashed it at the maid's feet. The maid was shocked, took a step back, and trembled. The young lady is like this. Once something goes wrong, she will smash things and beat and scold the servants. Fortunately, Mrs. Circus' family is rich, and the damaged things are replaced without the adults noticing. But the young lady is not always unhappy. She is in a good mood most of the time. That is, every time Miss Tia gets something good, she will replace the furnishings in her room. However, this situation has only happened a few times in so many years. Yes. They all say that you are not as good looking as Miss Tia, saying you. The maid rolled her eyes in panic, as if she really couldn't say such words. What did they say about me? Militiman has always known that she is not as good looking as Tia, and even has physical defects, but she knows that it is not a good thing to compare such things with the people she despises the most. Just thinking about it makes her feel angry and the whole person is about to explode. They said that you have small eyes and a crooked body, and you are more suitable for juggling than the pygmies from the south. The maid buried her head and exaggerated. Sure enough, she heard an angry scream from Militiman, and a look of gloating flashed across her seemingly panicked eyes. How dare they? How dare they say that to me? Militiman turned around in the room, smashing everything she could. The deformity of her body was a permanent pain in her heart. She didn't understand why her parents were so healthy, but she had such a crooked body at birth. This twisted spine made her destined to be different from others and bear more strange looks from others. Mutt told her that if she didn't want to be looked down upon, she had to climb up. When she climbed to a height that no one could reach, no one would dare to look up at her or talk about her crooked back. She originally thought that Sepal would be the turning point. She originally thought that everything was within her reach, but Sepal died. Everything was ruined. She once again had nothing. Originally, if he died, then he died. It was nothing more than waiting for the next opportunity, but why? That bastard once again stepped in front of her, once again blocking her way? Since she was a child, Circa had told her that you don't look as good as Tia, but your status is much more noble than hers. Under such years of indoctrination, Militiman had already grown crooked. She couldn't bear to see Tia live better than her, not even a little bit. Those lowly country folk dared to criticize her like this and compare her with the pygmies. Pygmies are rare, and there are people in the kingdom who respect them very much, comparing them with the dwarf god Bez, but they are just a plaything after all, and also a representative of deformity. Militiman smashed all the furnishings in the room, and then sat down on the bed dejectedly, gasping for breath. Miss, what should we do next? The maid asked in a low voice. What can we do? They are getting married soon. Are you deaf? She will be a member of the royal family. What can I do to princess? Militiman roared. The royal family. The maid laughed softly, walked over on the empty space on the carpet, and reminded her softly in her ear, but miss, have you forgotten? We also have the royal family behind us. Militiman suddenly woke up, slowly turned her face, her eyes getting brighter and brighter. Yes, the royal family, what is there to be afraid of? They also have the royal family behind them, don't they? Chapter name Faya hesitated again. Also, I found a vampire who was so handsome, and then I thought he looked familiar, so I checked, and guess what? It was Lee Pace, who is famous for his good looks. Chapter 182 Book Collection. Lin Ya slept until the sun went down. She herself didn't know she could sleep so well. When she opened her eyes, she saw the crimson sunlight coming through the terrace, dyeing the white gauze floating in the room with an ambiguous halo. The young man in gorgeous clothes had changed into neat clothes and sat cross-legged beside the low table, flipping through a roll of papyrus in his hand. Hearing the sound of her waking up, he looked up and smiled slightly. Are you awake? Yes. Lin Ya smiled awkwardly and scratched her head. She didn't know when she fell asleep. She just vaguely remembered that she was very sleepy, and then she didn't remember it in a daze. She was too nervous and didn't sleep well last night. Maybe because he came, her mood relaxed and naturally sleepiness came over her. It seems that as long as he is here, she will feel at ease. Are you handling official business? She walked down from the bed, sat down beside him, and whispered, "Are you so busy? Even on the day of the engagement, you have to handle official documents?" A little guilt suddenly surged in her heart, and she bit her lower lip gently. "If you are too busy, you don't have to worry about me." She said so. Lin Ya knew that his intention to stay was nothing more than for the engagement dinner in the evening, but he was so busy that she wouldn't say anything even if he didn't stay for dinner. He did this just to save some face for himself and let others know that he really valued her. It would be a lie to say that she was not grateful, but she felt that when two people were together, whether they were happy or not, they didn't need others to know or recognize it. It was enough for them to know it themselves. She didn't want to make him so tired because of her. "What are you thinking about? It's not official business." Amónhotep curved his eyes and patted her head with his hand. "I'm looking at the books in your room." He stretched out his hand and pointed to the whole bookcase behind him, which was full of papyrus rolls. She slept so soundly, and he had nothing to do. He happened to see the bookcase in her room and flipped through it out of boredom. It was originally an unintentional act, but he accidentally discovered a treasure. "Are these all your books?" He pointed at the paper roll in his hand. No, they belong to my mutt." Lin Ya was stunned for a moment and answered truthfully. Tia herself is illiterate because no one has ever taught her, but Herod is a learned person. This room belongs to her, and this whole bookcase is filled with her books. Is that so? Then she is really a very knowledgeable person. Amónhotep put down the papyrus roll that he had just read halfway, took a hair from the hairband behind his head, smoothed her frizzy hair with his hand, and then tied a beautiful bow behind her head. Maybe because he was a soldier, the bow was beautiful, but it had a sharp feeling. He wore two hairbands today, one golden and one dark red. The dark red one was tied on Lin Ya's head at the moment. The two heads were against each other, with the same braids, and Amónhotep curled the corners of his lips slightly. "What were you so fascinated by just now?" Lin Ya touched the ribbon at the end of her hair carefully with her hand, a little confused. The papyrus was really big. The thickness of the rolled-up paper alone was more than 20 centimeters high, and the width was as long as a forearm. He had already read half of it, and took another piece of paper to write and draw while reading. He looked so fascinated. "Look," he put his arm around her waist and unfolded the papyrus bit by bit to show her the contents. Lin Ya couldn't understand the words on it. They were not the hieroglyphics he taught her to write, but another simplified version. She could only recognize some of them. Some of them were too simple to match her memory. But she could see that there were some geometric figures drawn on it, and the length of each side was marked, and there was a blank space after each paragraph. How to say this, it didn't look like an ordinary book, but rather like math problems done in school. Test paper. She was stunned for a moment and guessed. In her opinion, this piece of paper was a huge test paper. Well, it is, but only half is a test paper, and the other half is arithmetic knowledge. Amónhotep nodded, confirming her guess. It is a lost arithmetic work. He touched the traces left by the years on it with his hand, and then said softly, "Lost." Lin Ya was puzzled. It was understandable that books were lost, but why would such a test paper be lost? Even if it was not the same teacher, wouldn't the questions be similar? This work originated from the Hyksos and was funded by the original King Apophis. He paused, and then explained. It was no longer allowed to be collected a long time ago. It took a lot of time to make such a papyrus scroll. At the beginning, only a few were made, but before the subsequent reproduction was completed, Amos's chariot had already captured avarice, and everything related to the previous dynasty was burned. This test paper was not allowed to be reproduced again, and some valuable things on it were adapted by the Kemet arithmeticians, and the original version no longer existed. It was a pleasant surprise to see such a complete volume here. Even though he had walked through the life chambers of many temples in the kingdom and had seen the collections of many private collectors, he had never found it. The reason why he could directly pick out this one from so many collections was that it was too conspicuous and too big. This volume was very complete, only the paper had turned yellow after being placed for many years. It can be seen that the original owner cherished it very much. He got such a volume but did not leave any traces of solving the problem on it. Instead, he left the solution on some small paper rolls placed with it. Compared with the adapted version, This original copy obviously has much more content, and the ideas of the questions are more interesting. It is not difficult, but very simple and more practical. From how to use materials more reasonably to build a temple, how to calculate the water level more accurately, to how to feed your poultry, how to feed them to consume the least grain and gain the most fat. There are really many questions. Amónhotep wrote and drew for an afternoon, but only solved 2/3 of them. Of course, this speed is already very fast. Discovering such a collection obviously made him feel very happy. Knowing that she didn't learn many words, he pointed at the exercises on it with his fingers, read them to her sentence by sentence, and then analyzed the solution ideas. Maybe the yawn was a bit abrupt. Amónhotep looked at her helplessly and smiled dotingly. "Why are you sleepy again? Didn't you just sleep all day? It's still early for dinner, why don't you sleep a little longer?" Lin Ya shook her head embarrassedly, not daring to say that she was sleepy because of listening to him explain the questions. She was still very interested at first, but the more she listened, the sleepier she became. There was nothing she could do. She was not good at math. It was because of her unsatisfactory performance in science that she switched to liberal arts. She originally thought it would be very simple, so she just stared and listened, but in the end, forget it, she didn't have the talent. "Okay, I won't read it." Amónhotep instantly saw through her little thoughts, tapped her forehead twice with his fingers, rolled up the huge papyrus scroll as it was, and gently put it aside. The action was so gentle, as if treating a beloved lover. Lin Ya pursed her lips. "If you like it, why don't you take it back and read it? Why are you so conflicted?" "No." Amónhotep sighed and refused. It's not that he didn't want to, but if he took it back and someone with ulterior motives saw it, there would inevitably be some disputes. It's not that he's afraid of trouble, but some things are unnecessary, and it would be a pity if this precious scroll was damaged. Lin Ya tilted her head to think about it, then nodded ignorantly. He is a prince, and it does seem a little unreasonable for a prince to take the lead in reading contraband. Then, take it to Memphis as a dowry. She blushed and said in a low voice. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183 Uninvited Guests. The engagement dinner is called a dinner, but in fact it is a dinner for the two families who are engaged to have together on the night of the engagement. Of course, Amónhotep's family is a royal family, and Amos and Nefertari will definitely not lower their status to come. It is rare to be engaged to a non-royal princess. Before this, there was a king's concubine who was an ordinary citizen, but that was just to send a marriage certificate, and the king would not show up. The concubine's father signed it and it was over. There was no such position to prepare an engagement dinner. And Amónhotep can stayed here, undoubtedly to let people know how much he valued Lin Ya. Therefore, he not only had to show up, but also to show up solemnly. The black hair was combed flat, tied loosely with a golden headband, and the snake crown symbolizing the royal family was worn on the forehead, revealing a perfect face inherited from the Taa family. The makeup at the corners of the eyes was gorgeous and sharp, and she wore a very formal white shawl, with complicated cross knots, and the folds on it were stiff and straight. He didn't wear too many jewelry, just a simple necklace, armbands and bracelets, but this didn't affect his noble temperament, but made him more noble. Lin Ya also dressed up with the help of Ipt, wearing a traditional tight straight skirt, necklaces, waist chains, bracelets, etc. Some of them were private property of Amónhotep's betrothal gifts, made by top domestic jewelry artists, and some of the gems on them were treasures from enemy countries. Normally, she should wear a wig on such occasions, but she didn't like it very much. In addition, this dinner was a very private gathering. Only under her dictation, I started to braid a fishbone braid from the side, and finally let it fall loosely on the side of the ear. The red hairband was not removed, but braided into the braid, and the tail was tied by Amónhotep himself. Like him, there was no soft feeling, beautiful, but sharp. The servants had come to invite them several times before the two of them tidied their clothes and walked towards the banquet venue hand in hand. The banquet was held in the open space where the marriage contract was signed during the day. Now it was nightfall, and blazing braziers were burning all around. Flying insects flew towards the light and fell into the fire, making crackling noises. Rhea set up the main seat opposite the door and invited Amónhotep to go up, but he took Lin Ya's hand and sat with her behind the low table at the main seat. This was obviously not in accordance with etiquette. Rhea moved his lips but didn't say anything. Forget it, Amónhotep was the most noble person in the audience, so let him do whatever he wants. Melitamen and Circa were very calm, and consciously sat at a table across from the main seat, looking very honest. Melitamen lowered his head and took a sip of the wine in the glass, with a hint of hatred in his eyes. There were only a few guests today, only Rhea's family of 4, Amónhotep, and even if Aqaba was included, there were only 6 people. Rhea frowned at the seating arrangement in the venue, and felt that Circa was going to make trouble, because they deliberately left a table empty. Before he had time to ask, a servant hurried over, almost running. "What's the matter?" Rhea asked in a deep voice. "My lord, His Highness Amónhotep is here." The servant did not dare to neglect him and whispered. Rhea's face suddenly became ugly, and he instantly knew what Circa meant by leaving the empty seat. "Who is Amónhotep?" "She is the main wife that His Majesty intended to give to Amónhotep, and she is very ambitious." Who would invite her in such an occasion? Due to the situation, he could not argue with Circa now, so he could only suppress his anger and let the servants welcome Amónhotep in according to the specifications. He glared fiercely in that direction, but saw Circa smiling and winking at him. She did it on purpose, and this realization made Rhea even more furious. But just as Circa and the others had planned, he could not stop a princess from entering the house, and he had to swallow his anger. Amónhotep's scene was very grand. She did not get off the sliding chair. Facing the fact that she could not enter the house while sitting on the sliding chair, she directly ordered her followers to dismantle the gate of Rhea Manor. The heavy door fell to the ground with a muffled sound, and 12 strong men carried Amónhotep on the sliding chair and walked in through the gap in the gate. There were 2 maids fanning them in front and behind, and someone holding incense led the way in front. In this scene, there were fewer strong men carrying the chair, otherwise people who didn't know would think it was the king's trip. Amónhotep was carried all the way to the middle of the venue, and then he made a gesture. A beautiful maid bowed and walked over, kneeling down under her chair, and she stepped on the maid's back and walked down gracefully. "His Highness Amónhotep, how are you? May you stay young forever." Rhea could only bow to welcome her arrival, and Circa and Melitamen also bowed behind him to show respect. As for Lin Ya, she didn't bow. In fact, she felt that she should bow, but the boy beside her only held her hand with one hand, not letting her move at all. Facing Amónhotep's uninvited visit, he didn't even raise his eyes. Such a situation was definitely unacceptable to Amónhotep. She was obviously very angry, but on the surface she still looked weak. "I didn't know that someone is so arrogant before he becomes a member of the royal family." This sentence is obviously referring to the fact that Lin Ya didn't perform the ceremony. Lin Ya frowned. She didn't like this person, but what Amónhotep said was the truth. She is not a member of the royal family now. Not to mention now, even after getting married, her status is still much lower than that of a person of royal blood. Before she could say anything, Amónhotep spoke lightly. "I didn't let my fiancé perform the ceremony. Is there any problem?" He half lifted his eyelids and looked at Amónhotep coldly. He immediately blocked all the words she hadn't said. One is the regent prince and the other is a royal princess. It sounds like they are from the same bloodline, but their identities are so different. In terms of status, the 2 Amónhoteps may not be as good as Amónhotep's finger in the heart of Yamos. The significance to this country is self-evident. The former is the future king, and the king controls the life and death of everyone. Amónhotep was so choked up that he calmed down for a while and then spoke softly. "Third brother, I am just teaching your fiancée what to do. It doesn't matter if she is rude to me today, but what if she runs into father and mud in the future?" After she finished speaking, she flirted at Amónhotep. As a member of the Taa family, which is famous for its beauty, she is of course beautiful, and very beautiful. Today, she dressed up specially, and the whole person is very radiant. Needless to say, the effect of this flirtation is that no man can resist this temptation. As for Lin Ya, who is obsessed with face, her body was half limp. There was no way. Although she was a hostile evil force, she was really beautiful everywhere to hit Lin Ya's point. But Amónhotep's plan was obviously unsuccessful, because the man she wanted to hook up with was not an ordinary man, and he didn't even look at her. Instead, he looked disgusted with her. Amónhotep was not disappointed about this. Amónhotep's dislike for her was self-evident, but as long as there was a chance to become the queen, she would always try it. As for love or not, as long as there was power, what else mattered? Chapter 184 Gift. What are you doing here? After a long while, the young man raised his head. Amónhotep was happy, but hearing this, she felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on her. She calmed down and spoke slowly. Today is the day of my third brother's engagement. As your relative, how can I not attend your dinner? Amónhotep said with a smile. She walked over gracefully and asked the maid to remove an anklet from her ankle. I came in a hurry and forgot to prepare a gift. This anklet is made of the purest gold mine in Nubia, and it is inlaid with lapis lazuli from Lachinu. It is very precious. I will give it to you as a gift today. Although I am younger than you, I grew up in the royal family. I will shamelessly call you sister, she said softly, and then signaled the maid to put it on Lin Ya. Lin Ya subconsciously felt that something was wrong, but she didn't know how to refuse. The maid's rough palm was about to touch her toes. She shrank back and felt her body lighten. She was unexpectedly hugged into the arms of the young man beside her. Amónhotep put his arm around her waist and asked her to sit on his lap. He moved so fast that the slippers on Lin Ya's feet left a light red mark on the maid's face. The maid stood there at a loss. She looked up at Amónhotep and then looked back at her own prince. She could not carry out this instruction. His Highness Amónhotep made it clear that he would not let her wear this anklet for that lady. Her master was looking at her viciously. The consequences of not completing this task were obvious. Third brother? Amónhotep asked in confusion. Not worthy. Amónhotep raised his eyes and said lightly. The end of the boy's eyes was like a small hook inlaid with gold, which instantly hooked Amónhotep's heart. She was happy when she heard it. Third brother said not worthy? Yes, even if it was something taken off her feet, that lowly woman was not worthy of it. As a royal family, even a piece of her nails was much more expensive than this kind of lowly people. Amónhotep drank the wine in the cup slowly, then kissed his fiancée on the cheek without avoiding suspicion, and was satisfied to see Lin Ya's ears turned red instantly. After the set of actions, Amónhotep's face turned green. She opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, she heard the young man opposite her laugh. The sound was like clear river water, and like thick honey. Your stuff is not worthy of my Ya, it's too inferior. As soon as the voice fell, Amónhotep's anger brightened up his face. Lin Ya was like an outsider, watching the two siblings who didn't look like siblings talking to each other, swallowing a mouthful of saliva in her throat, and foolishly thought that Amónhotep looked better when he was angry, no longer like a fake person without emotions. Amónhotep took the handkerchief on the table that was prepared to deal with dirty items and covered the anklet in the maid's hand, as if to prove that the item was really of poor quality. He seemed to pinch it without much effort, and the fragile anklet immediately changed its shape. The so-called expensive lapis lazuli laid on it immediately fell to the ground with a crackling sound, mixed with the dust on the ground and the sand and gravel. Looking at Amónhotep's dark face, the boy's mouth curled up a bad smile. This quality is really bad. The gold was soft, and the anklet was squeezed into a shriveled ball in his hands in a few times. He threw it on the ground and washed his palm directly in clean water. Amónhotep's intention was indeed the same as her personality, and she had never had good intentions. Using her own anklet to insult his Ya, this is a kind of reward from the superior, and it is the lowest kind. Does she still know that she is shameless? Sister? Doesn't she know the agreement between her father and herself? Are you sure that you will marry her as your wife? What kind of dream is that? However, Amónhotep would not say such words. No matter how much he despises her, it is a matter within the royal family. It can be said in private, but not in public. Even if he has done enough psychological preparation, Amónhotep is still trembling with anger. The third brother really did not leave her any face. He actually crushed her anklet with a rag? He touched it with such a dirty object? She kept telling herself that this time she came to destroy the prestige of that woman, and she must not lose her manners here. With a glance, she saw the seat they reserved for her, and Amónhotep sneered, "Third brother, I have no objection to letting me sit below you, but your fiancé is sitting above me. I am afraid that this is not in accordance with the rules. If my father knew, what would he say? What would Jamos say if he knew? He would say that this girl is spoiled and arrogant, and is not a good candidate for a princess, and he would have a bad impression of her. The royal family is the royal family. They are extremely noble in terms of bloodline, while the untouchables will always be untouchables. A wild duck is a wild duck. It can never become an ibis even if it mixes with the ibis. If father knew, He would say that we understand etiquette and know that the third brother's wife is the future queen. A sweet voice came to her ears, but it came from behind. Amos pulled the reluctant Thutmose and passed behind her, and sat down at the lower end of the other side with great interest. She did not come in a sliding chair, but walked with Thutmose. With such a cheerful posture, she looked more like a princess than Amónhotep. "Sister, what are you doing standing there? This will disturb us from watching the singing and dancing." Amos pretended to be surprised and reminded with a sweet smile. Her brother taught her that no matter how much she hated Amónhotep, in the eyes of outsiders, they were always one. At this point, Amónhotep had nothing to say. As a princess of the same royal family, Amos's performance was much better than hers. If she continued like this, it would only make her look inferior to Amos and unreasonable. Although she hated him so much in her heart, she had to sit back in her seat with a gentle expression. Amónhotep felt that the anger in her heart had spread like wildfire. She drank 2 drinks in a row before she felt better. "Why are you here?" This sentence was only slightly different from what she had said to Amónhotep just now, but the meaning contained in the words was much more far-reaching. Although the young man's voice was not joyful, it was obviously gentle. "Of course I'm here to celebrate my third brother's engagement." Amos laughed happily, snatched a palm-sized gold-plated wooden box from Thutmose's hand, and turned around to put it into Lin Ya's hand. "It's not a good thing." "Well, it's a finished ruby dug out from Nubia last year. You can play with it." She said it lightly, as if it was really not a good thing and was just given away, but it was immediately different from what Amónhotep had done just now. "The one your father gave you?" Amónhotep raised his eyebrows in surprise. Yes, what's wrong?" Amos raised his eyebrows in return. The brother and sister made the same action, with the same purpose. "Nothing, thank you." Amónhotep smiled at his sister for the first time. That was the largest ruby mine in Kemet in the past 100 years. Amos liked it very much in private, but he was willing to give it away. This chapter is for the sake of the promise to the babies. Hey, although it is only the amount of a normal chapter, for me, who is in the late stage of lazy cancer, I really tried my best. Exclamation mark. See you tomorrow, see you tomorrow. Exclamation mark. Trojan horse. Exclamation mark. Chapter 185 Dinner. The scene was a bit subtle. The 2 princesses of the royal family who were most qualified to be Amónhotep's wives sat on the left and right of the main seat. One of them had a very sour face, and the veins on her hand holding the cup were bulging. The other one was putting her hand on the arm of another man, talking and laughing. But obviously, this was only one-sided. "Thutmose, I want to eat pomegranates." Amos pulled Thutmose's arm, shook it, took a pomegranate from the table and put it in his palm, blinking at him. "Your Highness, respect yourself." After repeatedly pushing the hand in his arm away, Thutmose looked at Amónhotep sitting above, and then looked at the clinky person next to him, with a look of despair on his face. "What is self-respect?" "Self-respect means, can you let me go first?" Thutmose was about to cry. What was going on? The prince was getting engaged, so why did she have to involve him? She even held hands and acted like a spoiled child in front of her brother. Did she really know that her brother didn't allow him to be too close to her? It would kill people. "I won't. Please let me go first." "I won't. It's very hot. Where is hot at night?" Thutmose felt like he was an antelope with a lion biting its throat. He was so pitiful. The prince on the main seat didn't even have the interest to look at him, only caring about his fiancée. The prince next to him was staring at him covetously. To peel or not to peel, that was a question. He was not afraid of peeling pomegranates for others, but he knew Amos too well. As long as he agreed to an unreasonable request, he would immediately make a more unreasonable request. In any case, this opening must not be opened. He stiffened his neck and remained unmoved. Circa was a smart person. She saw what Thutmose was thinking. She immediately called the maid and whispered a few words to her, asking her to present the peeled pomegranates to Amos. Her idea was simple. It was Thutmose who was ignorant and made Amos lose face in front of so many people. As long as someone peeled the pomegranates now, the face of Her Royal Highness the Princess would be saved. But she forgot that Amos looked like a girl in love. She didn't really want to eat pomegranates. She only wanted to eat the ones peeled by Thutmose. Therefore, when the maid presented a plate of crystal red pomegranates, Amos only looked up in surprise. Circa pretended to smile gently, but in an instant it was like falling into an ice cave. Amos twisted the corner of his lips coldly, tapped his fingers on the table a few times, and pushed the plate aside. She did not pester Thutmose to peel the pomegranate, but picked up a pomegranate and split it into several pieces with her slender fingers. The action and strength made people think that she might not be peeling the pomegranate, but breaking Circa's head. Amos was spoiled since childhood. No matter who you are or what your status is, she is unhappy. Circa's flattery immediately hit the horse's leg and was kicked hard. Circa looked ugly, but she did not dare to say anything. She had to swallow her anger and pretended to be indifferent. Rhea turned a blind eye to all this. He was not panicked by the extra 2 people at the private banquet. As the host of the banquet, he should have sat below Amónhotep, but because of the 3 guests who suddenly came, he sat at the last seat. He thought that Circa had asked for it. Although Amos was very indifferent, he was actually giving face. He did not get angry on the spot. After all, he still took her brother into consideration. Eat. Amos held the crystal-clear pomegranate seeds between his fingers and fed them to Thutmose's mouth. Thutmose didn't want to open his mouth, but there was really no way. Amos was arrogant and unreasonable. If he didn't open his mouth, she would keep pressing the fragile fruit to his mouth and stuffing it in. She didn't pierce the thin skin and stain his lips with a light red. He reluctantly opened his mouth. Amos was satisfied and fed him one by one. Akiba sat among a group of nobles, feeling very uncomfortable and sweating. She had seen countless engagement scenes, but she had never seen such a weird atmosphere. There was no communication between the groom-to-be and the father-in-law-to-be, and there seemed to be hesitation between the bride-to-be and her family. The 2 relatives of the groom were playing their own games. As Akiba, she needed to liven up the atmosphere, but how could she do that? If she were a modern person, she would know a word: baldness. The lightly dressed maids carried plate after plate of delicacies on their heads and gently presented them to the low table. The richness was jaw-dropping. The pre-meal desserts and fruits were removed one after another, replaced by various grilled meats, stews, bread and wine. Thutmose breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God, the fruits were finally removed, otherwise he would be fed to death. Who would have thought that he would not be able to laugh immediately, because Amos began to tear meat and forcefully feed him. Life was hopeless. He deeply suspected that Amos did not want to feed him at all, but just liked to see his cheeks filled with food. Looking at the main seat, he thought he might understand. Did she learn this from her brother? Nusha's grilled meat is not bad. Would you like to try it? Amónhotep tore off a small piece of grilled meat, shook it in front of the girl's mouth, and gently stuffed it in without waiting for her to answer. This stew is also very good, would you like to have some more? Before she had finished the stew in her mouth, she poured another spoonful of stew on the torn bread on her plate. Lin Ya opened her mouth and closed it again powerlessly. Forget it, eat it. How should I tell him that I'm full? A heavy and rich aroma floated in the air. The dancers came in one after another, almost shocking Lin Ya's jaw. It's no wonder she was shocked. Those dancers were almost naked. It's not accurate to say that they were almost naked. They just tied something called rope clothes around their waists. To be precise, it was a rope. These dancers were all domesticated. They were kept at home on weekdays and would come out to dance when there were activities at home. If the male owner had that need, they would be temporary bed partners. Their status was only equivalent to that of slaves. But for Rhea, they were just dancers and had never had any other use. This was talked about by his colleagues with great relish, saying that he was keeping himself for Circa and to please Vizier. Lin Ya knew that the dancers were dressed coolly, but seeing it with her own eyes was another matter. After a moment of stunned silence, she covered Amónhotep's eyes with her backhand. What's wrong? The boy asked in confusion. You are not allowed to look. She snorted softly, and then used more force in her hands. Why? The boy's voice was a little amused, and he asked knowingly. He understood what she meant, that his Yaya was jealous, but he just wanted to tease her. No. No one is allowed to look. Lin Ya was anxious, and used her other hand to pinch the flesh on his arm. But yeah, I cannot look, but I still have to eat, right? Amónhotep let out a slight hiss, aggrieved. I promise, I won't look at them. Oh. The hand covering his eyes loosened unconsciously. Right, how would he eat in this way? Miss Tikaya, it's not appropriate for you to control my third brother like this. A light laugh came over, and Lin Ya looked up and saw that it was Amónhotep who had been silent since he sat down. My third brother is of noble status anyway, how can you stop him from looking at other beauties? Lin Ya didn't say anything, Nor did she put her hands down, she just lowered her eyes and looked at the food in front of her, as if she didn't hear anything. If you want me to let go, I will let go. Aksha hasn't said anything yet? Why should I listen to you? Sister, is the food Nusa made today not to your taste? Why can't I shut your mouth when eating? Amos raised his eyes and asked innocently. They are from the same mother, but she just doesn't like Amónhotep. There are many things she doesn't like about her. She doesn't like her pursuit of interests, and she doesn't like her two faces. Chapter 186, The Gift of Amónhotep. Amónhotep was invited by Militiman. She had a good idea. Although she couldn't do anything, it was good to make trouble for the engagement party. But she didn't expect Amos to come right after her. Seeing that a war of words was about to happen, Rhea raised her hands and clapped her palms. The music stopped abruptly, the dancers retreated one by one, and the musicians came forward to play. On the other side of the river lives my beloved girl. Even if the Nile is turbulent and Sobek hides in secret, it can never stop me from loving her. I will step into this thrilling water. The love in my heart will calm the waves and make the huge waves surrender, like my golden wheat field. Why did she fall in love with me, just like an anchor locks a drifting cruise ship, and binds me tightly to her heart? The musician sang a cheerful ballad, a love song from the Old Kingdom. Many people would sing this song at the engagement ceremony. The dancer who caused the dispute no longer exists. Lin Ya put down her hand covering Amónhotep's eyes. Amónhotep raised his eyebrows and lowered his head to continue eating in small bites. She stopped, and Amos naturally stopped too. The scene returned to calm. Aqaba felt relieved, and began her work nervously. His Highness Amónhotep is truly the most famous young talent in the country, and Miss Taya is also a rare beauty. This marriage is perfect. She squinted her eyes and smiled, praising the protagonist of the wedding banquet. Everyone likes to hear nice words, especially in such occasions. But some people like to hear them, and there must be others who don't like to hear them. For example, Amónhotep, Sirka, and Militiman. Akbar, what you said is not right. Sirka smiled softly and interrupted Akbar's words. Although Artia is beautiful, she cannot compare with the two princes present. In my opinion, the two princes are the most beautiful. I don't know how many Kemet young men dream of goddesses. Princess Amónhotep is gorgeous and Princess Amos is charming, but they are both beyond Tia's reach. Her eyebrows were curved, with just the right amount of kindness, as if she was really humble and felt uneasy about others praising her daughter. Her slender fingers scraped the wine glass twice, and Amónhotep smiled slightly. She was very happy with such a statement. Gorgeous and charming, although these seem to be very beautiful words, but, haha, gorgeous is the temperament that a mature woman should have. As for charming, it sounds like a child. Child, yes, Amos is only 15 years old. What can she use to compete with herself? Mut told her that her father meant that the wife would make a choice between her and Amos. After all, Amos was still young and always did some incredible things. In comparison, she had a bigger advantage. What she didn't know was that Amónhotep had already reached a contract with Amos. If Lin Ya gave birth to heir within a year, there would be no talk of the royal queen. She said you were delicate? She said you were the dream goddess of many young men in Kemet. After swallowing a mouthful of food, Thutmose stretched out a finger and poked Amos' arm. The look in his eyes was very obvious, with a questioning look. Tisk, that Sirka might be blind. Amónhotep could say that, after all, she was still very convincing in appearance, and she was used to packaging herself in front of others. As for Amos, who would regard her as a dream goddess when these noble young men in Thebes were tortured by her behind their backs? Unless they were bullied by her and became stupid. Why? I don't look like her. Amos turned his face with a grin, and his voice sounded ill-intentioned. Thutmose shrank back and shook his head like a rattle. No, Sirka is right, she is right. Then am I also the goddess in your dream? The girl tilted her head slightly and breathed sweetly into his ear. Thutmose suddenly felt that the food in his esophagus came back up and stuck in his throat, unable to go up or down. God, save me. How should I answer such a question? Sirka's words obviously made her look unpleasant. Except for Amónhotep and her daughter who were willing to give her face, the rest of the people treated her words as air. Amónhotep, needless to say, he raised his eyes and glanced at her slightly, as if he was looking at something dirty. Yasmut has died a long time ago, right? After a long time, he sneered and asked Rhea instead of Sirka. Rhea's face was not very good either. Surka had ruined his daughter's stage in such an occasion. How did he feel about this? Huh? Why does my mother never talk to me like this? She only says that I am the best treasure in the world, and never says that I am inferior to others. Amos looked innocent. Is this a kind of excessive modesty? This was a bit serious, implying that Surka had bad intentions. Surka felt a little anxious when she heard it. She was about to open her mouth to refute something, but she shut up when she heard Rhea's words. He said, Surka, you are also a treasure in the hands of Lord Visir. Visir, he said. Visir. Her father. Surka sat firmly in fear. She knew that Rhea was not threatening her, but reminding her. She stood up for Amónhotep like this now. It is hard to say whether Amónhotep will remember her favor. But it will definitely offend His Highness Amónhotep, who is now the regent prince and is in charge of half of Kemet's political affairs, especially the north. And her father is the Vizier of the north. If Amónhotep intends to target him, then his life will definitely not be easy. Maybe the bribery incident that has been settled will be brought up again. Her father is already very old and has only a few years left in the world. He can't stand such torture. After eating and drinking, Lin Ya felt that she wanted to solve some personal problems, so she gently pulled Ipe's skirt and whispered something to her. There was no way, it was already very late, and she didn't dare to go to the toilet alone. Ipe understood instantly and led the way in front. She lowered her head, whispered to Amónhotep, and then followed Ipe into the night. Amónhotep watched her leave and put down the wine glass in his hand. Sorry, I have some personal matters to take care of. She smiled slightly, looking a little shy, and everyone knew what she was talking about at a glance. After that, Surka assigned a maid to escort her away. Lin Ya had just solved her personal problems and walked out of the toilet, and saw a slender figure standing in the moonlight. She looked over in confusion, only to see that the person turned sideways and looked back. It was Amónhotep. This posture was obviously waiting for her. Thinking of the unpleasant meeting with her last time, Lin Ya paused and took a wrong step back. Your Highness, do you have something to talk to me about? What could Amónhotep come to see her about? Or did he want her to give up action? Amónhotep smiled softly, completely different from the last time. She walked over a few steps and took out a box from the secret compartment of her cloak. I'm sorry. I was too extreme last time. I came here sincerely to make peace with you this time. She stuffed the box into Lin Ya's hand with a sincere look on her face. I knew that the third brother would not like the anklet just now, so I also prepared another gift. It's not very expensive, but it's a doll that I like very much. Can I give it to you? After that, she left without caring whether Lin Ya accepted it or not. Lin Ya was left holding the gold-plated box by herself, thinking, sometimes it's sunny and sometimes it's cloudy. What exactly is Amónhotep going to do? I'm late, so late. Actually, I have Alzheimer's. I didn't remember until 8 o'clock that I didn't send it. I cried. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Chapter 187 Cursed Doll. What is this? Would Amónhotep be so kind? Lin Ya didn't believe it. She opened the box and revealed an item wrapped tightly in linen. The linen was peeled off layer by layer, and inside was just as Amónhotep said, a doll. Doll? She took the doll out of the box and looked at it carefully under the moonlight. After watching it for a long time, she didn't find anything abnormal. She turned her head and asked Ipe, what does Amónhotep mean by giving me this? The doll was made very delicately. It was the image of a female figurine. It was mainly made of alabaster stone and inlaid with the gold ornaments. There were some lines on it, but they were blurred and unclear. It can be seen that it was indeed an item that was usually loved by people. Lin Ya couldn't figure it out. With what Amónhotep had always done, how could he not apologize or give gifts sincerely? Moreover, she had just deliberately found fault at the dinner party. How could she change her attitude in an instant? Ipe didn't answer her question. While he was thinking, he felt his hand lighten. The doll had been thrown into the bushes along with the box and the things. Don't touch things that come from unknown places. Lin Ya looked up and unexpectedly saw Amos. Amos. You dare to take Amónhotep's things? Amos raised his eyebrows and pointed at the things in the bushes. Is there a problem? Lin Ya's mouth trembled and asked a question that she wanted to hit herself. Isn't this nonsense? There must be something wrong if it was thrown away. In fact, what she wanted to ask was what was strange about the doll. After all, she couldn't see it after looking at it for a long time. As expected, Amos rolled his eyes and said slowly, I don't know. I didn't see what it was. That's it? That's it? You threw it away without even looking at it? What? You can't bear to part with it? I asked someone to pick it up for you. Amos raised his eyebrows, put his hands on his hips, and looked very angry. You didn't even open the gift I gave you, but you opened the one she gave you? And you're reluctant to throw it away. Lin Ya was so shocked by her that she lost her mind. Her head twitched, and she put her arms around her, acting like a spoiled child. Amos is the best. He knows that the things you gave him must be fine. Amos glanced at her casually, but he was not so angry anymore. What Amos gave me must be the best. I will put it in the shrine and admire it every day. Lin Ya was a flatterer and struck while the iron was hot. Better than the one my third brother gave me. Her Highness's eyes were cold. Yours is the best. Speaking of this, she seemed to have not seen what gifts Amónhotep gave her. How could she answer whether she liked it or not without even looking at it? But at the moment, Amos must have given her the most suitable one. She would say so even if the god Amon came. Okay, I didn't see the doll, but I think it's a cursed doll. Amos curled her lips. She didn't believe that Amónhotep had any good intentions. Cursed doll. Lin Ya repeated the word, still a little slow to react. Cursed dolls are a means used by priests. They usually curse the enemy on the dolls. This is what my mut did in major ceremonies. He threw the doll representing the enemy into the brazier and burned it. After a long time, Amos explained. He knew that she was so stupid that she couldn't react. I know. I'm just thinking. Will this curse really work? She cursed me, but what else can she curse? She stared blankly at the pointed corner of the box and the bushes, thinking. She might believe in gods, but she thought this kind of thing similar to Chinese witchcraft was outrageous. How could a good person react to someone else's vicious curse? It was unrealistic. What are you cursing? For example, cursing you to die suddenly, cursing you to be disabled, and for another example. Amos's eyes moved down and slowly stared at Lin Ya's lower abdomen, cursing you to be unable to have children. As a priest of the temple and a candidate for the successor of the god's wife, she grew up in this atmosphere since she was a child. In the war years, before every expedition, the priest group headed by Nefertari, the wife of Amon, would pray for the defeat of the enemy and the safety of the king. And the effect was obvious every time after that. Her father was unstoppable, while the Hyksos retreated step by step. In any case, Amos believed it. Lin Ya didn't know why she felt a little cold all over her body when she listened. This feeling was very inconsistent for her. On the one hand, she felt unbelievable, and on the other hand, she felt panic. Anyway, thank you, Amos. Lin Ya smiled gratefully. She knew that, like Aksha, Amos didn't need to come tonight at all. She came and repeatedly helped herself out. Although it was largely for her brother, it was also somewhat related to her. This favor needs to be remembered. You thanked me. Amos widened his eyes, looked at her strangely, and then pulled her to his side. She was not very tall, and it might be because she had not fully developed during her teenage years. She was a few centimeters shorter than Lin Ya, only reaching her cheek. She looked around and pushed Ibt aside. Okay, stop talking about these vague things. We are. Lin Ya looked at her hesitant look and tried to speak. Friends. Oh, to friends. This word seemed very difficult for her to say, and in fact it was true. When did Amos have any friends? Who would not run as far as possible when they saw them? She looked down on the noble ladies of Thebes. They were the same as Amónhotep, saying one thing on the surface and another behind the scenes. Amónhotep might even be much better than them. Of course, they looked down on her behind her back. Speaking of which, Amónhotep was not so annoying when she was a child, but all this slowly changed without knowing when. Friends. Lin Ya looked at her and said it slowly, one note at a time. Friends. Amos still paused for a moment in the middle, looking a little tangled, and his usual arrogance faded a little. Friends. She said it again coherently, her voice was barely audible, more like she was talking to herself than to Lin Ya. She had been alone all her life, and suddenly had a partner to share her joys and sorrows with. This feeling was really new. We are friends. She asked uncertainly. Yes, we are friends. Lin Ya laughed out loud. Oh my god, Amos is so cute. After saying it a few more times, Amos's performance was obviously much more natural. She straightened her back and leaned close to Lin Ya's ear. If you really think I'm a friend, then tell me how you made my third brother fall in love with you. She lowered her voice and whispered. Speaking of this, Amos actually felt that the third brother's personality was even harder to approach than Thutmose. So many noble ladies of Thebes had failed, and it was really surprising that Lin Ya could do this. Then share your experience and let her pursue Thutmose as well? She really liked Thutmose for a long time, so long that she herself didn't know when it started, and so deep that she herself didn't know how far she had reached. It's just that he doesn't like her and doesn't even want to say a few words. Scratching her head, Lin Ya didn't know how to share her experience about this kind of thing. In fact, she didn't know how to pick this high-ranking flower. Do you have someone you like? After holding it in for a long time, she said with a grunt, That's not right, that's not right. Amos is only 15 years old. Isn't this premature love? Oh, no, this is ancient times. In ancient times, people married early and matured early. But who is her love object? Lin Ya stroked her chin and thought for a long time before she realized that Amos's behavior at the banquet just now was so intimate that she was stupid enough to think it was a brother-sister relationship. To Thutmose. Chapter 188. The dinner party ends. It was so fantastic. The person Amos loved was Aksh's subordinate. Isn't it said that rabbits don't eat grass near their burrows? Thutmose was even worse than rabbits. I don't know what Aksh's reaction would be when he knew it. No, it was obvious that he had known it for a long time. The usually irritable girl beside him felt a little shy at this moment, and a light red color appeared on her wheat-colored skin. Then can you give me some advice? Amos blushed, and his toes made circles from time to time, looking at her with hope. The two girls chatted until the moon rose to the middle of the sky, and everyone at the banquet came out to look for it, and then they ended the topic. I understand. Amos took a deep breath and nodded solemnly. As for what she understood, Lin Ya didn't dare to ask. After all, she just told what happened between her and Aksha. What did she hear? The banquet was coming to an end, and the music played by the musicians changed from cheerful to low. Lin Ya and Amos walked back to the venue hand in hand. Seeing the young man waiting for her at the main seat, she immediately curved her eyebrows. Just now, when she and Amos told the whole process, it seemed as if she had walked the road she had walked with him again. The surprise of the first meeting at the market, the thrill of being in danger in Nehru village, the distant journey to Memphis, and the reunion at the divine marriage. It turned out that she had remembered every detail of the short days so clearly. It turned out that she loved him so much that she felt extremely sweet just thinking about it. She walked back to his side slowly and sat down gently. Why did you take so long? Amónhotep was relieved to see her back, and asked in a reproachful manner. He was really worried about her just now. If Amos hadn't followed Amónhotep, he might have wanted to go and see her in person regardless of etiquette. But what on earth did she go to do that took her so long to come back? Well, nothing, just chatting with Amos, and I forgot the time without realizing it. Lin Ya smiled, silly, her eyes curved into crescents. This is her boy, he looks so good no matter how you look at him, how can she be so lucky? So lucky to have him. For the second time in a long time, the girl took the initiative to put her arms around the boy's neck in front of outsiders and kissed him on the cheek. The last time was in Nehru village, when they were not on this relationship. At that time, she was so arrogant and timid afterwards. Amónhotep still remembers it vividly. A trace of surprise flashed across the boy's eyes for a short time, then he tilted his head, kissed her lips, and kissed her lightly. Lin Ya seemed to feel shy at this time, and began to resist with small movements. Amónhotep chuckled and let her go in a good mood. If there were no one else kissing, the man and woman on the main seat would make people sigh. This scene may be very beautiful, but few people present are happy. Amónhotep and others are not to be mentioned. Rhea pinched the cup in her hand fiercely, and the joints of the strong force were clearly visible. The cub born by the old fox is a little bastard. He is not married yet and he is touching her in front of her. The key is that he can't hit her or scold her. It's so frustrating. Amos stretched out his hand and pulled the skin on Thutmose's waist, and looked at him meaningfully. This made Thutmose grin. He is a man who regards strength as beauty. The principle he has always adhered to is to wear a loincloth instead of a hooded shirt, showing his tendon muscles to the greatest extent. It really hurts to be pinched by someone suddenly. What? Thutmose gritted his teeth. Well, what kind of food do you like to eat? Amos hesitated and asked. What kind of food? What does she want to do? Poison? Thinking of this possibility, Thutmose's hair stood up. No way, although he didn't know how to offend her, There was no need to poison her so much. His guarded eyes made Amos speechless. What did he want to do by being so defensive? Could she eat him? Just tell me what you like to eat, Amos said unhappily. Tia said that when she first met the third brother, she made a lot of food for him. Maybe I could try it myself? Of course, this idea would definitely not be told to Thutmose. If he knew, he might run even further away. Maybe. I like to take all kinds of detoxifying medicines. Thutmose shrank his neck and said carefully. A painful howl ended this not-so-pleasant engagement dinner. Everyone cast a surprised look at the place where the sound came from. Thutmose rubbed the inner side of his thigh that was pinch purple, wanting to cry but without tears. Your Majesty, Your Highness, please discipline your daughter and sister. Why is it always me who suffers the consequences? God Amon, if he could hold back, he would not have cried out. Only God knows how painful it is to pinch this place. He swears that the fatal wounds he received on the battlefield were not as painful as this. Amos, this little bastard, is really smart. He pinches wherever it hurts. No, he must take a good look at it when he gets home. He thinks it must be purple. In fact, if possible, he wants to take a look now, but thinking of the indecency of this action, he still suppressed his restless heart. Amónhotep was served to wash her hands in the basin brought by the maid, and raised her hand to call for her guards. A sliding chair was lifted from the side of the courtyard. She stepped on the maid's back and sat on it steadily. She smiled lightly in the direction of Lin Ya on the chair, and left the dinner scene as if no one was around, regardless of what others thought. The precious scent of incense ignited again. Even in such a cold night, the fan-holding maids in front and behind were still fanning themselves as usual, and Amónhotep, who was sitting in the middle, had already put on a cloak. Of the 3 royal family members present, only she used such a grand show, but she did not feel embarrassed at all. After saying goodbye to Rhea, the host, Amónhotep and his party also left here. Outside the collapsed manor, Amos had already pulled Thutmose to stand on one of the chariots, and watched the couple's farewell boredly. Go back and rest early, don't sleep too late, Amónhotep said softly. Yes. Lin Ya nodded in agreement. Someone will come to pick you up to the temple for premarital education tomorrow morning. Don't be late. If you have any trouble, remember to find Amos. Yes. If anyone bullies you, tell me. Okay. If. Whatever he said, Lin Ya nodded and responded obediently, very obedient. Amónhotep had a lot to say but didn't know where to start. The sound of fingers tapping on the chariot railing came over. He looked back with a bad face and glared at Thutmose fiercely. I know everything. Don't worry, go back. It's late. Lin Ya whispered. She knew that he was reluctant to leave her and wanted to talk for a while, but now so many people were waiting for him, it would not be good to talk for a while. But yeah, after today, we won't see each other for a long time. Amónhotep paused, with some grievance in his voice. Not long. Only 9 days. Lin Ya laughed. After today, both of them would be busy, and before the wedding, they were not allowed to meet again. Thinking about it, it was indeed a long time, but they had to separate. Aksha, but a lifetime is so long, this is just a short separation. She snuggled in his arms and sighed softly. She was reluctant to leave, but thinking about their future, she felt that everything was promising. The chariot sped away in the dark night. Lin Ya stood outside the door blankly for a long time, and then seemed to think of something, and hurried back. The evening breeze lifted Amos's red skirt, and she poked Thutmose's hard belly. Aren't you cold? She shivered. It was true. She was so cold wearing a cloak, and Thutmose was shirtless. Was he really not cold? The other party ignored her, maybe he was still sulking. Amos kept silent and scratched his hands with his fingers. If cooking is useless, why not find someone to assassinate him once? Beauty saving the hero? It seems that it is not impossible. Chapter 189 Dark Clouds. The study life in the temple is very boring. There are only a few things to do every day. Lin Ya feels that now she can memorize what Tantaman is going to say when he opens his mouth. Yes, it is a great honor. This time the temporary teacher is the chief high priest of the temple, who is mainly responsible for teaching etiquette, royal history, and wedding procedures. It is said that it should be taught by Her Majesty Nefertari herself, but maybe she really doesn't like me. I haven't seen her in the past 4 days. The water of the Nile River swirls around her feet. Lin Ya looks at the green water waves and falls into deep thought. The river water has turned green. The flood festival is coming. The uneasy mood has grown wildly in the past few days. It may be because of some premarital phobia. I always feel panic, as if something is going to happen. After thinking about it, there should be nothing missing, but I can't calm my restless heart. What are you thinking about? A stone flew down from the shore and landed in the water with a gulp sound, splashing a few scattered water drops, and the cool river water fell on the back of her feet. She shuddered and turned her head. It's you, Amos. After a listless greeting, Lin Ya leaned against the column again, and was visibly wilting. It has been a long time since she came here, and the awe she had when she first came is not much left. Now that she has finished half a day's classes, she can lean wherever she wants. The relief on her back was uncomfortable, so she changed her posture to make herself more comfortable. What else? It's not me, it's Amónhotep. Go, make room for me. Amos raised his eyebrows, moved Lin Ya to the side with his feet, and then sat down next to her. This is the ferry crossing near the river of the shrine. It belongs to the shrine, but it is not in the inner courtyard. It was just after the noon class. It was hot everywhere, but it was the coolest here. Amos was good at finding a comfortable place. I see you have no energy recently. Do you have too much homework? Amos usually does not go back to the palace to live. She usually spends the night in the shrine. The reason is simple. She has lived here for more than 10 years. It is more or less her territory. She is freer than in the palace. Lin Ya has been her temporary roommate during the days she studied in the shrine. Tisk, Tantaman's lectures are indeed a bit boring. No one answered her. She shrugged her shoulders and said to herself, "It's more than boring." Lin Ya finally spoke. She looks so hopeless. Remember your identity. The royal mission will give you responsibilities. You must love your husband and support his decision. The will of the people is the hottest torch. Listen to it and feel it sincerely. Never have a trace of undesirable thoughts. God will punish you. God is the most fair judge. She dragged out the tone, ups and downs, and imitated Tantaman to recite the words he taught her. She was only halfway through her speech when Amos was overjoyed and followed her to recite, but he changed his tone while speaking. The two of them finally fell to the ground with laughter, laughing so hard that their stomachs hurt. Yeah, you are so similar. Ha 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 ha. Amos laughed so hard that his stomach hurt and rolled on the ground. Speaking of the wedding rehearsal tomorrow, I will accompany you, she said excitedly, with a little light in her eyes. The rehearsal of the royal wedding, maybe she will use it in the future? Speaking of the wedding, the person who was still smiling just now collapsed again, becoming a half-dead look. Hey, what's wrong with you? Amos frowned and asked in confusion. Maybe it's pre-marriage phobia. Lin Ya curled her lips and wrinkled her face. Pre-marriage phobia? What are you afraid of? My third brother doesn't eat people. Amos looked at her with an even weirder expression, as if he was looking at a weirdo. What's there to be afraid of getting married? If she were to marry too, she would probably be so excited that she couldn't sleep for several days and would want to jump up and down every day. Amos, I always feel that something is going to happen recently. After a pause, Lin Ya said slowly, with a serious expression. Huh? What could it be? Amos was dizzy from the afternoon sun, like an elegant cat, and just rolled his eyes in boredom after hearing this. You just think too much? Just be a bride quietly, and leave everything to my third brother. She turned over and continued. But what if there are things that even Aksha can't solve? Seeing Amos's expression, Lin Ya paused and swallowed all the questions in her stomach. Forget it. She always thinks about it like this. Maybe it's just like what Amos said. Is it just overthinking? Maybe I should really believe Aksha. Besides, haven't I thought about it long ago? I must have the determination to overcome all difficulties. He will be the king in the future. Only someone as powerful as him can be worthy of him. Lin Ya knows that she is still far away from this goal. A huge cloud floated from the distant horizon. Some thin grain made the sunlight less dazzling. Amos sat up straight and was amazed. What's wrong? Lin Ya tilted her head, a little confused. Yeah, do you see that cloud in the sky? Although the sunlight was not so strong, it was still a little unbearable to look directly at it. Amos stretched out a finger and pointed at the cloud in the sky. I saw it, and then what? Lin Ya said indifferently. It's just a cloud, what's the big deal? Hey, this means it may rain in the next few days. Amos blinked, patted her shoulder twice, and said playfully. This. Lin Ya was stunned. After thinking for a while, she remembered that rainfall is very rare in the south of Kemet, so that every time it rains, it will be considered a gift from God. Such a day will be regarded by the people as a good day and a symbol of auspiciousness. In the next few days. Does it mean that it may rain on the day of her wedding? Yes, auspicious meaning. But looking at the appearance of this cloud, if it doesn't continue to accumulate, it may soon dissipate. Seeing Amos's enthusiastic look, she didn't say anything to spoil the mood, but just laughed twice and echoed him. She couldn't be happy. Her right eyelid jumped so happily these days that she had no time to think about other things. As the old saying goes, the left eye jumps for wealth and the right eye jumps for disaster. But where will this disaster come from? Looking at the dim sun through the clouds, she squinted her eyes slightly because of the light. Amos, who is the god's wife? She hesitated for a moment and asked a question that had been accumulating in her heart for a long time. From the moment this marriage was decided, someone had been mentioning this word to her over and over again. Tie said that the god's wife would also marry Aksha, and the existence of the god's wife would make her humble. And Mariaman had also said this. Lin Ya never believed that the existence of the god's wife would shake the love between her and Amónhotep. But since she was uneasy, did this uneasiness come from this? God's wife? My mutt, Nefertari. Amos didn't understand and answered without thinking, why are you asking this? Well, someone told me that the god's wife would marry Aksha. But if it was Nefertari, it would be inappropriate no matter how you think about it. How could a mother marry her own son? You are talking about this. Amos straightened his back and became serious for a rare time. The god's wife will marry my third brother, but do you know what a god's wife is? She looked into Lin Ya's eyes and explained her doubts seriously. Before my mutt, there was no such position as god's wife. My mutt was the first god's wife conferred by my father. This was also a measure taken by my father to prevent the power of the temple of Amon from becoming too strong. He used the god's wife to firmly control the temple of God. The god's wife is the wife of God Amon in the world. She is the person with the highest status in the temple of God, except the chief high priest, and holds great power in the temple of God. You have to understand that the god's wife will indeed marry the current king, but she is not selected by the temple of God. Only the king's wife can be the god's wife. In other words, it is not that the god's wife will marry the king, but that the queen must be the god's wife. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190 Curse. There are rumors outside that the god's wife is a royal bride selected from the inside of the temple of God. This is not true. They will not understand the truth inside the royal family. They thought that this was a rope that the temple of God used to tie them to the royal ship, but they did not know that this was a tool used by the king to control the temple of God. Only after becoming a queen can you become a god's wife. She told Amónhotep that she was a candidate for the god's wife. In fact, Amos knew from the beginning that she could not be the god's wife and would never be. Because she never wanted to marry Amónhotep, she only wanted to be with Thutmose. Amónhotep's advantage seemed great, but if the third brother did not choose her, she would not only not be the queen, but also the position of God's wife would disappear. The god's wife would never pose a threat to Lin Ya, because after the third brother ascended to that position, she would be the god's wife. So yeah, do you understand? You don't need to be afraid of the arrival of the god's wife, because in the future, you will be the owner of this title. Amos said earnestly. There are many factors in the selection of the god's wife, including the support of the temple, the wishes of the previous god's wife, and more importantly, the choice of the king. Only the king's choice has the final say. Lin Ya nodded, not quite understanding. Okay, do you have any other worries? Tell me and I'll help you solve them. Amos stretched and said lazily. Lin Ya hesitated. In fact, she had no problem. What bothered her most was the inexplicable feeling of uneasiness. She couldn't tell why. Still feel uneasy? Oh, you are too worried. There are only a few days left. If there is any accident in any link, it must be from Your Highness. His Highness Amónhotep suddenly fell ill. Her Majesty Nefertari asks you to go over. Before Amos finished speaking, her personal maid ran over in a hurry and interrupted her. Her guess was right. The accident really came, and it was from Amónhotep. What disease? Is he dying? Amos asked with a bad face. Your Highness, I don't know much about this either. I just know that many doctors have been there, but they are helpless. Your Highness, please go and have a look. If it's too late, Her Majesty Nefertari will be angry. Wait, what did the doctors say? Amos tilted his head, thinking, that's not right. Amónhotep was in good health. How could he suddenly get sick? Is it retribution? Thinking of this possibility, Amos curled his lips, and his face became more impatient. The doctors said. The maid's face looked a little ugly, and she hesitated. Hurry up and say it, what's there to say? Yes, Your Highness, the doctors said that they can't find the cause of this disease. It may be caused by the curse. The maid's master was already angry, and she didn't dare to neglect it, and said hurriedly. Curse? Question mark. This word made Amos and Lin Ya look at each other, knowing what the other was thinking, and thought of a possibility. Was it the gift that Amónhotep sent that day? It was indeed a cursed doll, but the object of the curse was not Lin Ya, but herself. At this moment, Lin Ya, who had been restless for several days, suddenly felt an unprecedented calmness. She knew that something would happen, and it really happened. But before it happened, she was not afraid. Fear only comes from the unknown. When you know clearly what you are going to face, it will no longer be fear, but only a challenge. And challenges never make people feel terrible. Amos stood up and patted the wrinkles from sitting for a long time, and walked slowly behind the maid. Lin Ya continued to sit in the same place. Amónhotep came for her this time. This matter itself had nothing to do with her. If she rushed over and cared too much about it, it would only make her look guilty. What she had to do now was to do what she had to do and not let this matter affect her. They all understood the current situation, so Lin Ya did not move, and Amos would not ask why. Some things only need to wait for a result. From a distance, the sound of the fork bells coming from Amónhotep's chamber could be heard, and from the outside, the priests dancing wildly could be seen. Amos frowned, then walked inside. She could understand Mut's feelings to some extent. They were just sisters born of the same mother, and it was natural for her to be in this situation. But Mut ignored it, ignored the extent of her disgust for Amónhotep. Before she could go in, she saw a stretcher carried out of the chamber, on which a figure curled up like a shrimp, covered with a white sheet, moaning softly. Is this Amónhotep? Amos was a little uncertain. How could such a small figure on it be her? The priests carrying the stretcher walked hurriedly, and Amos understood a little in his heart that they were going to carry Amónhotep to the temple of Khonsa to pray for the blessing of the god of medicine. Nefertari was furious to see that she had taken so long to arrive, but she had already lost a son and a daughter, and now her daughter was sick. She could not bring herself to scold her, so she just asked her to follow with a sullen face. Amos replied yes and followed silently without saying much. Is Amónhotep really very ill? She had always thought that Amónhotep was pretending, but when she saw the stretcher passing by her just now and the pale face of the person on it, she became a little uncertain. Tuya happened to pass by her, so she stretched out her hand and pulled the person over. Your Highness Amos. Our Highness is really very ill. Please don't pull me, let me follow my Highness. Tuya turned around, revealing a tear-stained face. This expression did not seem fake. Amos paused and involuntarily let go of her hand. The Khonsa temple had already made preparations for the reception. The priests lined up to win people in. The huge statue was surrounded by priests chanting scriptures. The strong incense made people breathless. The priests put Amónhotep down, and Amos saw the face covered by the bed sheet. The face was pale and bloodless, and it was a paleness that could not be painted by any mineral powder. At this moment, she didn't even have the strength to groan. Just from her face, you can see that she has lost a whole circle of weight. You can't imagine that a person can lose weight so quickly in a short time. Amónhotep's cheekbones protruded high, like a dead body that can breathe. The priests were performing exorcisms. Nefertari didn't come forward, but just watched from the side, crying silently, and constantly chanting prayers. That was her child. As a mother, she couldn't bear another child being taken away from her by Anubis. Amos felt a sense of sadness for no reason. He said he felt disgusted, but after all, they were sisters from the same mother. How could he not feel anything when he saw her like this? His mind was shaken. She might be really sick, otherwise why would she let herself become like this? Did she love beauty the most? Amos couldn't tell how he felt about her, because in the beginning, Amónhotep was not like this. At that time, she was kind and innocent, the best sister in the world. No matter what troubles she got into, She would always be there to deal with them for her. She knew that when Mut was pregnant with Amónhotep, she had another sister, but that child unfortunately died, so Mut transferred all her debts and love to the other sister to one person, and gave her double everything. So no matter how Mut favored her, Amos had no complaints in her heart. Amos didn't know, nor was she clear. She only knew that one day, the light in Amónhotep's eyes went out, she walked into the palace alone, and then closed the door. The next day, the door opened again, and she saw someone coming out. At that moment, Amos knew that her sister Amónhotep, in a sense, was dead. Ababa, actually Amónhotep. Drag away, shut up. You are not allowed to spoil the plot. Chapter 191 The Spellcaster. Amos didn't remember how many times the prayers were sung in the temple. The person on the stretcher showed no signs of moving. Instead, he became weaker and weaker during the exorcism. At this moment, he couldn't even open his eyes. Nefertari shed tears silently. The scene in front of her made her almost breathless. The Kansa priest jumped and danced in the temple for an afternoon, and finally announced that he had given up. A priest wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, looked up at Nefertari's face, and moved his lips, as if he had something to say. If you have something to say, just say it, Amos said lightly. She knew that this might not be a good sign, and the priest was also afraid of touching bad luck, but some words had to be said. She believed that her Mut had always been a very strong woman. No matter what the result was, she would accept it in the end. Yes, Your Highness. The priest bent his body and walked to Nefertari in small steps. Your Majesty, the evil spirit that His Highness Amónhotep has attracted is too powerful, and we can't do anything about it. He stammered, but finally said it. Nefertari's body trembled instantly, her eyes widened in disbelief. How could this happen? Her daughter was so healthy, how could she suddenly become like this? Is it malaria? The malaria that took Sepal's life? Will it take Amónhotep's life now? No, Your Majesty, His Highness Amónhotep did not have malaria, but was cursed. The priest said carefully. In fact, this disease looks very strange. According to their research results, Amónhotep's vital signs are still stable, but they don't know why he is so painful. Speaking of it, only an evil curse can cause such a result. Curse. Then break it. Nefertari's eyes were filled with tears, and she grabbed the arm of the Kansa priest in a hurry. Curse? If it is a curse, it will be easy to deal with. Priests have always been the best at breaking curses. If the Kansa priest can't do it, then go to the Amon priest or the Mut priest. There must be someone who can do it. Your Majesty, we are powerless. The priest lowered his head, not daring to look at her face. We guess that this powerful curse may need the person who cast the curse to remove it. The person who cast the curse? The hand that was tightly holding his arm suddenly relaxed, and Nefertari's body was unstable and she took 2 steps back. She knew her own daughter well. Amónhotep had done a lot of evil things over the years. Finding the person who cast the curse was like looking for a needle in a haystack. She quickly restrained her emotions and called someone to lift Amónhotep up again. She pretended to be calm and said, but there was still a slight tremor in her voice. Let's go to Amon. The omnipotent god Amon will definitely save her daughter's life. She is the nominal wife of Amon. She is willing to offer the best of everything in the world to Amon, just to ask for Amon's protection. Your Majesty, I can't do anything. With Tantamon's answer, Nefertari could no longer hold on. If Amos hadn't come to help her, she would have almost fallen down. Her daughter is really hopeless? Is Anubis really going to take his child away from him for the 3rd time? For this kind of curse, I'm afraid we need to find the person who cast it. Tantamon looked back at the man on the stretcher who was almost as thin as a skeleton, and sighed softly. Like Nefertari, he knew how unreliable this proposal was. He had watched Amónhotep grow up. He was a good child when he was young, but he became so distorted when he grew up. If that person hadn't died at that time, everything would not have become what it is today. This might be fate. Anyway, on behalf of my husband, thank you for your efforts. Nefertari forced a smile and waved again with red eyes. She planned to send Amónhotep to the Horus temple in Nukan. With Busiri there might be a glimmer of hope. As a mother, she couldn't give up this last glimmer of hope. It's just unknown whether Amónhotep can hold on until he arrives at the city of Nukan. Tuya, do you have anything to report? When she turned around, Nefertari saw Tuya's hesitant expression and asked immediately. She was her daughter's personal maid. Did she know anything about her daughter's illness? Yes, Your Majesty. I think I might know the murderer who cursed your majesty." Tuia looked up with bright eyes. When she said this, everyone in the room was shocked. Nefertari turned around in shock. Her eyes were about to burst, like a drowning person grabbing a piece of driftwood. "Who is it?" she asked anxiously. "Your Majesty. It's His Majesty Amónhotep's fiancé. She had a dispute with His Majesty recently." Tuia's eyes were extremely firm. She looked directly at Nefertari and continued to add, "Your Majesty has always been a popular candidate for His Majesty Amónhotep's wife, and our prince himself thinks so. You and His Majesty Amos also intend to make this happen. Apart from Tuia, I can't think of anyone else who has a reason to curse His Majesty." The depressed mood was swept away, and Amos sneered, "What nonsense are you talking about? How could Tuia curse Amónhotep? She has offended so many people. What evidence do you have to say that it must be Tuia?" At first she thought it was an accident and Amónhotep was really sick. After going around in circles for a long time, she finally got to the point. It turned out that it was really a trick to plot against Tuia. "Your Majesty, please understand. His Majesty Amos is on good terms with Tuia, so of course he will protect her friends, and what I said is not without basis." Tuia prostrated herself on the ground with a very humble attitude, and after a while, she seemed to harden her heart and said another thing through gritted teeth. "Your Majesty, you know that His Highness Amónhotep's temper is not very good. Some time ago, His Highness was very angry and wanted to hurt Tuia. It is not impossible that she is seeking revenge." This sentence was a little difficult to say. After all, it was Amónhotep who started it first, but she was a member of the royal family after all, and the royal family could kill someone if they wanted to, and no one would ask her to pay with her life. On the contrary, Tuia's crime of murdering the royal family was unforgivable. She has hurt so many people, and this is your basis. Amos walked up to her slowly, lifted her chin, and pressed forward. "Do you remember how she hurt those women in Memphis? Do you remember how many maids died in your bedroom? Won't you have nightmares living in a palace like that? When you were sleeping at night, have you ever heard the painful groans of your former sisters? There are probably countless people who want someone like Amónhotep dead." Such a reason itself was a bit far-fetched. Tuia trembled under such pressure, and her words began to tremble. "Enough. Amos. Amónhotep is your sister after all. At this time, can't we just ask her to take a look to confirm whether it is her?" Nefertari scolded, "Or would you rather watch your biological sister die for an outsider?" Her sharp eyes swept over, and Amos paused. Even his breathing became a little tight. "Mutt. You have always been a reasonable person. Do you have to verify such a ridiculous reason? If you have the time, you might as well go and hire a skilled doctor." "Amónhotep, don't." A bright red palm print was imprinted on Amos' face, and it quickly swelled up. I don't know if it was because of the reaction force or something else. Nefertari's hand stopped in mid-air after hitting her, and it has been shaking slightly. Amos covered her cheek in disbelief. Her eyes were red. Mutt hide her. This was something she had never done before. Even if she did something excessive, Mutt had never done anything. Not only Amos was stunned by this slap, but also Nefertari herself. She had her beloved daughter, and this action made her unbelievable. But Amos did not deserve this slap. No one could curse her daughter in front of her. Whether she is or not, as a quasi-royal family member, Amónhotep is half her relative, so she should come. Chapter 192, Curse Removal. The sun leaked in from the high windows of the temple, sprinkled on Lin Ya's hair, and coated it with a chestnut halo. She stood in the middle of the crowd, without the slightest fear on her face, and was extremely calm and natural. This was the first time Nefertari saw her after she knew that she was dating her son Amónhotep. It must be said that she really had some fascinating capital. No wonder her two sons fell into her hands. Such a delicate figure and a pretty face were enough to compete with her two daughters. With such an attitude, she was either completely unafraid of the consequences, or this matter had nothing to do with her. But even if it had nothing to do with her, she was really not afraid at all under such pressure. The mistress of the two places, the great wife of His Majesty Amos, the wife of the god Amon, Her Majesty Nefertari as well. Lin Ya got into position, leaned forward, put her head against the ground, and saluted respectfully. "I heard that you had a conflict with my daughter Amónhotep, right?" Nefertari did not call her up, but flicked her nails slightly and said slowly, "Your Majesty, I don't want to hear your explanation. Murdering the royal family is a serious crime. Since you are the beloved of my dear son Amónhotep, as long as you are willing to cooperate in removing the curse, It will be fine. Nefertari interrupted her and smiled indifferently. That tone seemed to confirm that it was Lin Ya who did it, and she herself was a tolerant forgiver. Your Majesty, I don't understand what you are talking about. Without Nefertari's approval, she couldn't look up, but her voice was still very calm. Oh, I know what Amónhotep did to you before, but since you are going to marry my son in a few days, it is not an exaggeration to say that we are a family now. If you remove the curse for her today, the grudge between her and you can be resolved in the future. Nefertari said in a gentle voice, with a hint of temptation in her words. The royal family never apologizes for the mistakes they have made. Such words are already giving Lin Ya face. What she said undoubtedly represented a certain degree of forgiveness. If the person on the other side was really a criminal, he would be grateful now and cooperate with him. But unfortunately, all her words were like playing the lute to a cow, because Lin Ya was not the one who did this. I guarantee as the wife of Amon that as long as you cooperate, no one in the kingdom will pursue your crimes. As if she was afraid that she would not believe it, Nefertari smiled and brought up the name of the wife of Amon. The ritual of removing the curse requires the willingness of the person who cast the curse to be the best, otherwise Nefertari would not have said so and directly took blood. Your Majesty, I admit that I have had conflicts with His Majesty Amónhotep, and I am not a good-tempered person. I have thought about revenge, but the thing you said was not done by me. No one ordered, but Lin Ya still raised her head, with a pair of eyes open and straight, looking at Nefertari. If she wanted revenge, she would not choose such a stupid method. Curse, if a living person really died because of being cursed behind his back, it would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? Those eyes were clear, like a pool of clean spring water, you can see through them at a glance. She was quite open, such clear eyes startled Nefertari, and she began to doubt her own judgment. Your Majesty, His Highness Amónhotep is not well. Tuia ran in a panic, accidentally bumping into some fragmented decorations along the way, and they fell to the ground with a clang. What? Nefertari didn't care about anything else, and ran into the inner room with her skirt lifted. Amónhotep was just as Tuia said, with a terrifyingly blue face, shaking violently, as if she was having an epileptic seizure, and a foamy mixture flowing out of the corners of her mouth. Two priests came forward and pried open her teeth with their hands to prevent her from biting off her tongue when she was unconscious. If that happened, there would be no hope. Your Majesty, stop interrogating. Just remove the curse. She won't be willing. If this continues, there will be no hope for His Highness. Tuia burst into tears and knelt down in front of Nefertari, knocking her head against the floor with a thumping sound. What if she is not her? Nefertari whispered. Tuia was stunned for a moment, then shook her head quickly. Tuia believes that she must have harmed His Highness Amónhotep. Your Majesty, please make a decision quickly. Nefertari was still a little hesitant, because Lin Ya's reaction was really not like that. If the blood of someone who is not the one who cast a curse was used to remove the curse, it would not have any effect at all. But as Tuia said, if she didn't make a decision now, it would be too late to say anything when her daughter was gone. Thinking of this, Nefertari closed her eyes and finally made a decision. Go get the knife. If her blood didn't work, if it wasn't her, then she was willing to compensate her. Now is the time to prove your innocence. If your blood has no effect, you are not the one who cast the curse. Nefertari threw the scimitar on the tray to Lin Ya's feet and said coldly. It was a sharp weapon that was half a cubit long, flashing with a cold light. Lin Ya picked it up from the ground and weighed it in her hand twice. What if I have another way to prove that it was not me? With me, this is your only way. It was just a little blood. Lin Ya tried to convince herself, but she still couldn't make the move. The result of this method was controllable. Amónhotep was deliberately targeting her. No matter what the result was, she would definitely wake up after the blood was shed. But even though she said so, she had no other way. Yeah. Don't. As she was hesitating, she heard Amos shouting, and she stopped in a daze. The knife in her hand was taken away by someone. She saw Amos with half of his face swollen, arguing loudly with Nefertari. It can't be her. If so much blood is lost, she will die of excessive blood loss. Die? This word made Lin Ya stunned, and she turned her head to look at the blood container they brought. It was a large basin for washing faces. Should it be filled? Thinking of this, she covered her wrist tightly. Not this way? Is there any other way to save your sister? No. Your Majesty, it was she who heard and cursed His Majesty Amónhotep. There is no mistake. I have brought evidence. Another voice interrupted, and everyone in the hall looked in that direction. They saw that Melitamen had come here at some point and was kneeling on the ground to salute Nefertari. She was holding a gilded wooden box in her hand. Lin Ya's eyes condensed. This was the thing thrown away by Amos that day. Is there really a problem? Stand up and talk. Nefertari's attitude towards Melitamen was obviously much better. Lin Ya was still kneeling here, but she directly asked Melitamen to stand up. Your Majesty, look at this. Melitamen's expression was extremely solemn, and he slowly opened the box. When the contents of the box were revealed to the public, everyone except Amos and Lin Ya gasped, "Cursed doll! Your Majesty! I knew it must be her." Tuia said anxiously, "Do you have anything else to say?" Nefertari turned around, her tone full of fatigue. "I gave her a chance, but she lied and didn't tell the truth. I thought the girl that her sons liked would have something special, but this time, she was disappointed. This doll was given to me as a gift by His Highness Amónhotep on the day of my engagement. Your Highness Amos can testify to this." "Yes. I can testify that I saw with my own eyes that Amónhotep stuffed the thing into Ya's hand." Amos pointed to Tuia on the side with a cold expression. "If you don't trust me, you can ask that Tuia and ask her to swear in the name of God whether it was given by Amónhotep himself." Nefertari was very hurt by the way of speaking. This was her daughter, but because of an outsider and a slap, she didn't even want to call her mutt. "Your Majesty, it is true. This doll is your Highness's favorite thing. It was specially given to Miss Tuia, but she used it to curse your Highness." Tuia's eyes were red, and she actually started crying while speaking. "Your Majesty, please make the decision for your Highness. My happiness is gone." Zuaz who won't let me reply to the comment, 55,555,555,555. Chapter 193 Innocence. Your Majesty, please make the decision for His Majesty Amónhotep. Melitamen actually called out loudly, and then bent down again. "Use the knife," Nefertari said softly. It seemed that Lin Ya would not be willing to bleed. If soft methods didn't work, they would have to use force. Two guards held Lin Ya, and the cold blade touched the beating pulse of her wrist. "Do you want to argue?" Those eyes were full of stubbornness and dissatisfaction. Nefertari waved her hand and asked the guards to stop. I said, "It's not me. I don't accept such a decision." "What do you disagree with? Isn't the outcome controlled by Her Majesty Amónhotep? If she wants me to die, then she will wake up. In other words, even if she doesn't wake up, I will still die after bleeding. Then what do you want to do?" Nefertari smiled. Her smile was clear and cold. "I have other ways to prove my innocence. Do you think I don't know? You are delaying time. According to the time, Amos's messenger should have arrived at the palace of my dear son." The smile slowly bloomed, like a poisoned flower. "Do you think he will come to save you?" "I have already stopped the messenger. Don't have that idea. Do you have anything else to say to my dear son? Maybe you can think about it now." Nefertari also knew that a person who had lost so much blood would not survive. She pursed her lips and said this sentence like alms. "Did Aksha Amos call him?" Lin Ya was stunned. She turned to look at Amos's face that turned pale in an instant, and then turned back, her eyes clear and firm. "No, I don't have anything to say to him, because I will tell him myself." I said, "I have other ways to prove it, and this method is not to delay time and wait for my fiancé, His Highness Amónhotep." The blade still stayed on her pulse, but she smiled very easily. "This is just a small matter, and my fiancé is not needed." "Oh." Nefertari was attracted by such confidence and was interested. "Your Majesty. Your Highness doesn't have much time." He still had to speed up the bleeding. Nefertari glanced back, with a warning that made Tuia shut up instantly. "So what is your method?" The shackles between her arms were no longer so heavy, and Lin Ya easily got rid of them and climbed up from the ground, then pulled the box out of Melitamen's hand. "You picked it up from the bushes." She raised her eyebrows. "So what? Are you guilty of being a thief?" Melitamen said unwillingly. "Then you should know whose name is written on the back of this doll." Lin Ya smiled slightly. "You admit it? This is the murder weapon you used to curse His Majesty Amónhotep." The people around looked at this, not knowing what was going on. Lin Ya took out the doll openly, removed the linen covering it, turned the doll around, and showed it to everyone. She had thought of this solution from the beginning. On the day when Amos threw it away, she wondered if there was such a reason, so she ran back to pick it up. That day, She looked at the moonlight and saw a line of dark black characters on the edge of the black hair. The total length was not even a grain of rice. It takes a good eye to find this. If you don't look carefully, you will think it is the hair of the doll. The top character is a crescent eye. Seeing this, she understood a little bit. This character represents the moon god Ach. This is the curse doll used to curse Amónhotep himself. Nefertari also didn't understand her intention at first. When Lin Ya presented the doll to her, she took a closer look and found the clue. The doll was passed around by everyone, and the expressions on their faces were more exciting than each other. The only thing in common was that they all fell silent after reading it. Melita was a little flustered for no reason. You mean, this doll is not used to curse my daughter, but to curse yourself? Nefertari's face was full of distress. Why would someone curse himself? Impossible. Melita shouted out of control. On the other hand, Amos, whose red eyes were now a mixture of relief and worry, panicked when the box appeared. She knew that what Amónhotep took out would not be a good thing, so she threw it away directly, but she didn't expect it to be this kind. If she had known earlier, she would have been the most powerful witness. She thought that the appearance of the doll would bring an irreversible situation, but she didn't expect it to be resolved so easily. But why did Aya write her own name? Did she know the power of this curse? Yes and no, my name is definitely written on it. Lin Ya said calmly, as if she was not afraid of this empty curse at all. No. Because when His Highness Amónhotep gave it to me, it did have his name written on it. She said nonchalantly. After she found out that day, she wrote her own name on it. Unlike the people here, she never believed that dolls could curse people. She had no other choice. Amónhotep must have a trick up his sleeve for doing this. If she smashed this one, maybe they would make another one. By that time, nothing could be explained. This might not have been a brainwave, but it was a more powerful argument. You said she cursed someone to get sick, but why didn't herself, who rode on the same doll, get sick? Amónhotep's illness was fake. Nefertari hesitated. Yes, I'm fine. I didn't do this. If I was the one who cursed, my name would be written on it. Why am I still standing here? I even wrote my date of birth in more detail. As she spoke, she turned around, as if showing her health. His Highness Amónhotep's illness has nothing to do with me. If it is a curse, then the curse should be on the first person who wrote down His Highness' name. As soon as Nefertari finished speaking, she didn't have time to say anything. There was a thud, and Tuia fell to the ground in panic. What this meant was self-evident. In fact, Lin Ya's words were not so perfect, but Tuia's words undoubtedly proved the truth of her words. Tuia, why did you curse my daughter? Nefertari was furious, but she still controlled her emotions well and asked sternly. I didn't do that. It was not me. It was your highness. Someone, come. We found the person who cast the curse. Drag her away and bleed her. Nefertari's voice was a little embarrassed and annoyed, and she didn't want to hear what she had to say, because she had already guessed the truth by now. It was her daughter who wanted to harm people, which led to such a good show. She almost killed the wrong person. Your Majesty. It's not like that. Bleeding it can't save your highness. Tuia was dragged by someone, kicking the ground with her feet, wrinkling the luxurious carpet. She shouted at the top of her lungs, and there was a wet spot on her skirt. A subtle smell floated in the air. Your Majesty. Your Highness is. Your Highness drank mercury. Ah, it's still early today after I finished typing, so I'll add more chapters for you on. Ababa, don't think it's too little. I've tried my best in 3 minutes. Trojan horse, I'm running away. Chapter 194 Scar. Mercury. This cry successfully stunned everyone. Nefertari no longer cared about punishing Tuia and hurriedly ran to the inner room. The priests looked at each other and hurriedly followed. It would be easy to deal with if we knew the reason, but it has been delayed for too long now, and rescue should be carried out immediately. His Highness Amónhotep was really too courageous. In order to get rid of his love rival, he even thought of such a thrilling method. You know, serious mercury poisoning is a fatal thing. A group of priests rushed into the inner room, scratching his throat and pouring water. After working for an afternoon, they finally saved Amónhotep's life from Anubis. A trace of rosy blood finally appeared on the cheeks of the person on the stretcher, and Nefertari's heart was relieved. When everything was over, Tuia tremblingly brought a large bucket of milk and poured it into Amónhotep's mouth. Nefertari's face didn't look good after she realized what was happening. After the sacrifice was over, she stayed in the inner room without saying a word. Twiya, Militiman, what kind of punishment will you receive for framing someone else? Amos played with a gilded box and said coldly, a cane on the mouth. Twiya and Militiman crawled on the ground, shaking uncontrollably, even their voices were trembling. Cane on the mouth? Huh. Amos laughed softly, and that laugh sounded special and chilling. Framing civilians is just a cane on the mouth. What about the prospective royal family? To frame a royal family, not only will you be hit on the mouth with a thick board, but you will also have to accept the punishment of the sun god after the beating, hanging on a flagpole in the sun. If the god is willing to forgive you for framing his bloodline, then you will survive. Amos' cheeks were still swollen, but he spoke clearly. The 3 words quasi-royal family made Militiman feel humiliated. With red eyes, she raised her head without anyone saying yes and glared at Amos. Quasi-royal. She is quasi-royal. Am I not? Don't forget, I was the fiancé of your dead eldest brother. I am also quasi-royal. I am also your sister-in-law. Why do you treat her like this, and treat me like this? Is this fair? She shouted at the top of her lungs. The blue veins on her neck were clearly visible, but when Amos walked towards her, she obviously shrank. The cold puppet slapped her cheek, and she heard Amos on the opposite side laughing gently. Why? Fair? Are you telling me this? In my eyes, you are just a pariah. Are you talking about my eldest brother to me? Militiman, are you saying that you are my sister-in-law? Are you worthy? Even when my brother was alive, he never acknowledged you, and you, if I remember correctly, when my brother passed away, you had already severed your relationship with him. The puppet slapped a slightly red mark on Militiman's face. In her reflection, Amos' expression became more and more terrifying. Not letting you be buried with him is the greatest kindness to you. Why do you have to jump in front of me? The death of Sepal is a fact that Amos still cannot accept. It has become a scar in his heart that will never fade. Now, this scar has been opened by Militiman, and it is bleeding. She will never forget that when her brother just died and she returned to Thebes, she heard Militiman tell the noble ladies around her that Sepal was a short-lived man who looked so strong but was so useless. If she had known this would be the result, she should have let Tia marry that short-lived man and be buried with him. From that day on, Amos always thought about when to punish Militiman's mouth that could not be closed, so that she could no longer utter a word, but it happened that she took the initiative to come up to him now. Since you are my brother's fiancé, Militiman, did you hear it? The call from the reed marsh. Amos smiled and lifted her chin with a doll, and said with a smile, I didn't. I didn't. The voice was light and fell into Militiman's ears as if it really came from the deep reed marsh. Don't worry, people like you will not reach the reed marsh. You will be dragged into the sticks of eternal darkness by the evil spirits at the first checkpoint to the afterlife. The gloomy breath surrounded Militiman, making her almost crazy. She kept covering her head and shaking left and right. She closed her eyes tightly, as if she really saw an evil spirit holding her ankle in the endless darkness. Tuahaya. It's all you. If it wasn't you, how could they find out? I don't know what she thought of. Militiman's strength instantly became huge. She broke away from the guards on both sides, with bloodshot eyes, and rushed towards Tuahaya like crazy, pinching her neck tightly with both hands. Tuaya's face turned purple and soon she rolled her eyes. The guards rushed over in a panic and it took a lot of effort to pry open Militiman's hands. Tuaya fell to the ground, holding her neck, coughing and gasping, and moved cautiously to the edge bit by bit. She's crazy, she's crazy. Why? All this is mine. The position of princess is mine. I will also be the queen in the future. It's all because of that short-lived Sepal. If he hadn't died, I could have been the queen. Militiman shouted crazily. Before anyone could react, she quickly ran to the statue of Amon, plucked off the double feather crown of pure gold, and put it on her head. Why did they all choose Tia? Am I so inferior to her? In fact, she was not crazy. She knew clearly that if this matter was exposed, she would probably die. Since she couldn't live, she had to be unrestrained once in this world. She blasphemed God. Stop her! Nefertari shouted angrily. A group of guards surrounded her. 7 or 8 people spent half a day trying to take the crown off Militiman's head but failed. The bottom of the crown pierced Militiman's scalp during the struggle. A trickle of blood flowed from her wig. She grinned nonchalantly, then pulled off the crown and threw it hard on the ground. The pure gold crown was deformed by the force of the throw, but she didn't even look at it. I've worn this crown before, and I've worn it enough. It's nothing more than this. Aren't you going to punish me? Come on, I'll take it all. Militiaman smiled strangely, and with her twisted body and the blood constantly flowing from her face, she really looked a bit scary. Lin Ya looked at this farce and sighed silently. Militiaman looked a little pathetic. It was true that she was her sister in name and half-blooded to her, but she did not want to plead for Militiaman, even if it would make others think she was cold-blooded. She was not a saint. She always believed that people who made mistakes should be punished. Thinking of the life that Tail lost, Militiaman deserved what she got, whether it was exposure to the sun, a cane for mouthing, or anything else. And Circa will get the punishment she deserves one day. Great God Amon, this person insulted your body and blasphemed your divinity. Please allow me to sentence her. Nefertari held up the scepter in her hand with a calm face. She wanted to sentence this blasphemer who blasphemed the gods. But for some reason, she couldn't say anything more when she was halfway through the verdict. This child has the same bent back as her dead daughter. Her daughter died at birth, but this child is still alive. This child is a lucky one. She did not die of illness and lived well until now. They are so similar. If that child survived, would he be the same age as Militiaman? Nefertari couldn't do it. She really couldn't do it. Her daughter died, and now she wanted this child to survive. She is crazy. Take her back and let her father discipline her strictly. She is not allowed to leave the manor for the rest of her life. After a long time, Nefertari made the final judgment. This sentence made everyone present unable to believe it, and Militiaman was stunned. She was a false accuser and a blasphemer. She blasphemed the gods and insulted the royal family. Was she sentenced so lightly? Chapter 195 After the Storm. Okay, it's okay, you can prepare for the wedding with peace of mind. Coming out of the temple of Amon, Amos and Lin Ya said softly. The wound on her cheek made her dare not speak loudly, and the 5 red finger marks made people feel distressed for no reason. I'm sorry, Amos, because of me, you and Her Majesty the Queen quarreled. Her face was swollen, and Lin Ya wanted to rub it but didn't know how to start. Amos could have been used, and she only needed to watch the fun, but because of such a burden, she suffered so much. Lin Ya felt very happy that the problem was solved without using Aksha, but she couldn't be happy to see her friend paying for herself. It's okay, don't think too much, sooner or later, Her Majesty Queen Mu and I will have a quarrel, and she has been partial to Amónhotep for a long time. Amos curled his lips and said nonchalantly. Look, you don't even want to call Mut. What can I call you? She doesn't even consider me her daughter. Her voice became low, and Lin Ya felt that she would cry in the next second. Although Nefertari was partial to others, she still treated her as a jewel in her palm, but this time she hid her in front of so many people, and on the face. This made Amos unacceptable, and even began to doubt her previous favor. She understood why Nefertari loved Amónhotep, but she didn't understand why the living could never be compared with the dead. She came to understand the feelings of others, so who would understand her? Then when are you going to reconcile with Her Majesty the Queen? Forget it, are you hungry? Amos looked up, threw all his troubles aside, and didn't answer this question. Reconcile? Let's wait for Mut to apologize to her. He actually hit me for a liar like Amónhotep. I can't stand it. Hungry. Lin Ya was stunned. If Amos hadn't said it, she really wouldn't have thought about this question. When she said it, she looked up at the sky that had already darkened, and suddenly she felt a sense of emptiness in her stomach. Gurgle gurgle, 2 stomach growls came from the stomachs of both of them. Amos sighed. What do you want to eat? The weather was too hot. I wanted to eat but I didn't have an appetite. I didn't know what to eat, which was very worrying. I did think of something special to eat. Lin Ya swallowed her saliva. In fact, she felt the same as Amos every day, not knowing what to eat, but today was different. Hearing Amos say that it might rain, she immediately thought of a somewhat special food. What to eat? Amos asked in confusion. Lin Ya pretended to smile mysteriously, then put her mouth close to her ear and whispered. Are you sure you can eat it? Amos' eyes widened after hearing this and he took a step back. However, Lin Ya did not give her a chance to escape. She held her wrist tightly with her hand and dragged her outside while talking. Let's go, let's go. I promise you will never forget it after eating it. Don't forget that Aksha is with me because I cook delicious food. Lin Ya patted her chest and promised, but she felt a little guilty when it came to cooking delicious food. But this one today, I promise it will be delicious. Amónhotep woke up in a daze. Her limbs had no strength yet. She forced herself to sit up from the bed. Water excessive scratching of her throat made her feel a burning pain in her entire throat. Tuia hurriedly rolled over and poured her a glass of water. She drank it in one gulp and felt a little more energetic. Is she dead? In front of him was his living room, unchanged. There was no one beside the bed except Tuia. Amónhotep felt something was wrong, but he still asked. His voice slipped out of his injured throat, extremely hoarse. Your Highness, she is not dead, Tuia said tremblingly, with a hint of crying in her voice, almost crying. What? Not dead? Amónhotep was shocked and angry. The cup in her hand was thrown to the ground fiercely, but she had no strength, and the cup was not damaged after it fell. Did my third brother save her? The soft and weak hand grabbed Tuia's collar, and the vicious expression seemed to want to eat her alive, but unfortunately he had no strength, and he couldn't even hold on tightly. His arm slid down several times, almost stripping Tuia's clothes off. No, no, hiss. Tuia answered in a low voice, but accidentally pulled the wound on her mouth, making a sound of pain. Amónhotep finally saw that something was wrong. Tuia's mouth was swollen and her lips were bloody. There was a bloody smell when she answered. Her words were not clear. From the hole at the corner of her mouth, you could see the dark inside. Tuia? What happened? Where are your teeth? Amónhotep was panting. When he thought of a possibility, he suddenly felt a little more stuffy in his chest. Your Highness, please don't be angry, please listen to me. Tuia pulled her lips with effort and said with difficulty, you are very lucky to be alive. The person who beat her mouth with a stick did not show leniency because she was Amónhotep's personal maid. On the contrary, because she followed him to do a lot of bad things, the 30 strokes were almost all to death, and each stick was bleeding. Her teeth were about to fall out. She slowly told Amónhotep everything that happened after he fell into coma, word by word, almost using up all her strength. As she finished her last sentence, Amónhotep's face was already dark. The fine linen sheets under her were torn into pieces by her. If she still had strength, they would have been torn to pieces. Tuia. Tuia, she panted with difficulty. Tuia hurried forward to rub her back. Your Highness, you are alive. It's really great. Tuia hugged her head and cried softly. Tears flowed through the corners of her festering mouth and finally fell on Amónhotep's hair. Many people think that she, Tuia, stayed with Amónhotep because she was greedy for wealth, but she knew that if it weren't for this arrogant man protecting her day after day, she would have died long ago. Thinking of everything that happened today, she still feels scared. When the prince began to twitch, Tuia really thought she was going to die. Today is a day of survival for both the master and the servant. If it weren't for Her Majesty the Queen's sudden decision to save Miss Militiaman, they would have faced only death. They should thank Anubis for his forgiveness. Don't cry, Militiaman, you rubbish. Her Majesty the Queen has ordered you to stay at home. You should move to the house at the back of the manor. Rhea looked at Militiaman, who was sent back, and her voice was calm without any ripples. I know, my good father. Militiaman smiled coldly and raised her foot. Wait, Tuia is your sister, why do you have to be so cruel? Rhea frowned and questioned, I have to ask you, father, we are both daughters, I hope you will treat us equally. After that, Militiaman walked out of Rhea's sight without looking back. Miss, I'll pack up everything right now. I've seen the room over there, but it's a little small. I'll move everything over there and decorate it so it's the same size as here. The maid comforted her while packing. Militiaman's house was close to the gate, and it was convenient to go in and out, otherwise Rhea wouldn't let her move to another house. The difference between there and here was only the size of the room, and there was actually no downgrade. Militiaman stretched out a finger and fiddled with the brazier on the wall out of boredom, not listening to what the maid said. It was just a change of place, she didn't care, she would end her life like a mouse anywhere. Even if she wasn't confined, so what? Would she marry better than Tia? If not, she would rather not marry. Her fingertips touched a piece of ash that was different from the burning wood. She was stunned for a moment, then stared. Who has been to my room? Her face was distorted, as if she was extremely excited. She took a few steps forward and grabbed the maid's chest. No one has been here before. The woman was startled and stammered. It doesn't matter, this is the order given to me by the gods, the great gods. She laughed crazily, then took the brazier off the wall as if it were a treasure, muttering to herself. Go tell Her Majesty Amónhotep that I want to see her. Miss, you can't get out now. It doesn't matter, you just need to tell her that if she doesn't see me, she will regret it. She was full of confidence, looking at the fragile ashes in the basin. And the gods will never give you another chance like this if you miss it. Ababa ababa ababa, guess what Militiman discovered? Chapter 196. Please see. Do you know how to cook? Seeing Lin Ya about to sprinkle the handful of cumin on the barbecue, Amos immediately grabbed her wrist in fear, trying to stop her. Unfortunately, it was too late. Lin Ya tilted her head, smiled, and loosened her hand, and the handful of cumin immediately fell from her hand and landed evenly on it. Or, I'd better ask someone to send some dinner. Amos swallowed his saliva, took a step back, and said dryly, it's terrible, isn't that wild fennel? Isn't it used to make corpses? Hey, isn't this enough to eat? Lin Ya squinted her eyes, deliberately misinterpreted her meaning, and pointed to the barbecue on the rack. Are these things you made really eatable? Exclamation mark. The grill sizzled over the fire, and you could see oil oozing out of the slightly charred skin. The meat looked fresh and delicious, and the addition of wild fennel not only did not destroy the original aroma, but also brought a strange taste, making the aroma even stronger. This was not important. What was important was the raw materials she chose for the grill. Why did she eat so many duck heads? Isn't it good to eat roast duck? Why did she sprinkle wild fennel on the only duck? What is this to eat? How to eat it? Question mark. 5 duck heads were strung on a long skewer, with neat cuts under the heads and no necks at all. Although her eyes were tightly closed, Amos always felt that someone was looking at her. The water inside the duck heads was rapidly released by the charcoal fire, and they gradually became shriveled. The color also changed from pale due to blood loss to burnt yellow. The fragrance in the air was irresistible, but Amos thought about it carefully and decided to forget it. No one had ever eaten the heads of such birds. She didn't dare to eat them, not to mention that they were sprinkled with so much wild fennel. Hey, the roast duck will be ready in a while. Do you want to eat some of the head first? The duck heads were quickly roasted, sizzling and fragrant. Lin Ya saw Amos's resistance and shook them in front of her eyes with evil intentions. Take it away quickly, Amos said as he stepped back with a look of disgust. Puff, Lin Ya was just teasing her. Some people just can't eat some messy things. It's okay to make a fuss. We still have to respect other people's eating habits. The duck head was pulled off the skewer and placed on the plate. Lin Ya sat opposite Amos and ate it slowly. It was roasted just right from the inside to the outside. The smell of spices such as cumin, onion, pepper and so on was perfectly blended and pickled inside. It was gently broken from the chin and split into 2 halves. The rich smell escaped into the air. Gurgle a light sound came from Amos's stomach. She looked up at Lin Ya, as if she had mustered up a lot of courage. That? Is it really delicious? Lin Ya raised her eyebrows, tore the meat from her cheek, and stretched it in front of her. Would you like to try it? Although it was right to want to try it, it was still a bit unacceptable to take it so bluntly. The expression of the person opposite became very subtle, with an expression of I knew it. Amos immediately sat up straight, stiffened his body and controlled himself not to hide back. Eat. Amos stuffed a mouthful of duck head into her mouth with an extremely embarrassed expression. This expression was just like swallowing poison, shrinking her neck, closing her eyes, and frowning. In fact, it was true. As soon as the roast meat entered her mouth, she even skipped the action of chewing and swallowed it whole. However, after swallowing it, another taste began to spread in her mouth, and a strange aroma echoed in her mouth. If you don't think carefully, it was made of wild fennel and it was the head of the duck. This piece of meat was no different from other ones. Another bite. Amos nodded awkwardly. After taking another bite, the delicious taste accompanied by the strange aroma of cumin made her feel a lingering fragrance on her lips and teeth, especially the slightly burnt skin on the outside, but it was not moist and tender when bitten. It was absolutely amazing. Amos admitted that she was really fragrant. Such delicious food. Please leave her half. It would be nice if it was a chicken head. After eating 2, Lin Ya put it down, but after thinking about it, she picked up another one. Hey, ducks are always more fishy than chickens. It's just that there are no chickens in this world. Fortunately, the voice was very low and no one could hear what she said. Why are you still eating when you can't eat any more? Amos also only ate 1. It was delicious, but if you eat too much, you will feel that the taste is weird. Didn't you say that rain would have a good meaning? Yes, what does this have to do with you forcing yourself to eat when you can't eat? Lin Ya was speechless. After thinking about it, She slowly spoke. I heard that brides who eat too much duck heads will have rain on their wedding day. Question mark? Is it true? Why haven't I heard of it? Amos was stunned. After reacting, he picked up the last one on the plate. It's true. Lin Ya patted her chest and assured, it is indeed true. She is from northern China. Since she was a child, she has heard the elders in her family say that girls can't always eat poultry heads, otherwise it will rain heavily on their wedding. But she was only doing this half and half today, half because she wanted to eat, and the other half was something that came to her mind naturally after she relaxed her mind. Amos, what do you think will be the process of tomorrow's wedding rehearsal? After dinner, Lin Ya lay in bed and couldn't sleep, thinking about all sorts of things in her mind. What could it be? Go to sleep. I'll go with you anyway. Aren't you sleepy? Amos was so sleepy that his words were unclear. Do you think Amónhotep will have sequelae? This time no one answered her, and she heard the sound of even breathing. Amos had fallen asleep. No entry. The two guards raised their weapons and kept the visitor out. The visitor was wearing a tight cloak. Judging from her height and body shape, she should be a woman, but it was so late, and no one could be allowed in. I have His Highness Amónhotep's order. The woman under the cloak said slowly, her voice very low. His Highness Amónhotep has fallen asleep and is ill, so it is impossible for him to want to see you. The guard said coldly, what the hell? His Highness drank mercury for jealousy, and was finally saved? This matter has spread throughout the temple, and he is still very weak. Why would he summon others at this critical moment? You said you have His Highness's order, just show it out. If you have it, we will let you in. Another guard paused and said, Amónhotep has a bad temper, and there have indeed been situations like today during his duty. He summons some people in secret, and if you stop them, you will be punished. Although he is not well now, it is really hard to say, and you still can't be too sure. Your Highness has not given a written order, so you should be flexible. Militiaman thought for a moment and said softly, she had no choice. Her maid was stopped outside the door from delivering a message to Amónhotep, and her direct contact Lin Ya was also seriously injured. She had to come alone. She was now under house arrest, and the chance of being discovered during the day was too high. However, she was unwilling to wait. There were only 5 days left before the wedding, and she couldn't just watch that bastard climb to such a high position by stepping on her shoulders. Queen? If I, Militiaman, can't be the queen, then why should you be the queen? Can you help me pass the message to Lin Ya? She knows me. The two guards looked at each other and nodded gently. There was a sound of dragging footsteps in the palace, and Lin Ya's figure stretched into a long line under the moonlight. She walked out, covered with a plain white veil, with a pair of eyes exposed, staring at Militiaman without emotion. Her Highness doesn't want to see you. She didn't say anything, but directly unfolded a piece of straw paper. Really? Just tell Her Highness that if she doesn't see me, she will regret it. The hood of the cloak was lifted, revealing Militiaman's inexplicably excited face, which looked weird no matter how you looked at it under the moonlight. What do you want to do? I don't want to do anything, you just need to tell Her Highness the truth. Militiaman smiled slightly, and stroked the thing in her arms with her hand, gently, as if stroking the skin of her lover. It's up to you, it's all up to you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197 Mixed Blood. I haven't come to see you yet, but you came to see me first. Amónhotep half raised herself from the bed, and Lin Ya thoughtfully brought her a cushion to make her more comfortable. She looked up at the moon hanging high in the sky, lowered her eyes, and said faintly, tell me, what's the matter? Militiaman said that if she didn't see her, she would definitely regret it, so other things could be put aside for the time being. She wanted to know what kind of thing would make her regret it. Your Highness, do you still remember our agreement? Militiaman suddenly raised her head, and a pair of eyes showed amazing light. Agreement. The fingers that were drawing circles on the sheet stopped for a moment. Amónhotep thought for a long time, and then it seemed that it suddenly became clear. You mean, the time in Edfu? In Edfu, she saw that this person had different ambitions. She thought that Militiaman might be a temporary partner, one in the temple and the other in Rhea Manor, to eliminate the threat to the Queen's Road from two aspects. Just as she thought, Melitamen asked for the position of the little queen. She was willing to conspire with him. The reward was that he would mention her to his father Mut and betroth her to Amónhotep. Amónhotep agreed without thinking. It was nothing else. She was just a little queen. The difference was like that between the main wife and the little wife. It wouldn't make any waves. Besides, Melitamen didn't have the slightest beauty. Amónhotep would not fall in love with such a woman even if he was blind. I remember, but the situation now is different from what we said at the beginning. Amónhotep sighed, as if he was regretful. Your Highness. Have you given up? Melitamen said in surprise. Did she say that she must ascend to the position of the great queen? There are still many opportunities. How could she give up like this? Yes, I gave up. Amónhotep turned around and raised his lips slightly. Give up? Impossible. The position of the queen can only be mine, but I don't need a partner like you, Melitamen, who is more likely to cause trouble than to help. If you are fine, go back. She said lightly. Your Highness. We haven't lost yet. She is going to die. Even though she said it so impolitely, Melitamen still persevered. The enthusiasm in her eyes seemed to be able to penetrate her eyes and burn Amónhotep. What did you say? Amónhotep's expression became tense in an instant. He didn't know where he got the strength from. He straightened up and grabbed the bed. Your Highness, look at this. This is the secret of her life experience. With this, you go and tell His Majesty, and she will never stand in our way again. Melitamen carefully took out the brazier that she had been holding all the way from her arms. Her movements were so careful, as if she was holding a priceless jewel. It was not that she had to go through Amónhotep, but only this person could help her with this matter. Except for Amónhotep, no one else could let this matter be passed to His Majesty the King and His Majesty the Queen in its entirety. Look! She used the moonlight to point at the remaining words on it, and her voice trembled with excitement as she read to Amónhotep in a low voice. It was the guidance of God that Tia Hyksos' marriage would bring destruction to the entire family. It was the secret letter that Singer threw into the brazier that day. The papyrus burned up in the fire, but the pigment was still visible on the ashes of the papyrus. She held the brazier filled with ashes, her expression very excited. Your Highness. Did you hear that? She is a Hyksos. Hyksos will not be allowed to marry the crown prince. As long as your Majesty knows, she will definitely die. This is her chance. Opportunity. Her movements were contradictory and ridiculous. She wanted to swing a lot, but she was afraid of destroying the ashes in the basin. Melitamen was immersed in the beautiful future she imagined, and she didn't even notice that Amónhotep's face had changed. Amónhotep's expression was very blank, and such a thing didn't seem to have any impact on her. Are you sure? Is she a Hyksos? Her voice was empty, like an unconscious question. I am sure, Your Highness. Did you see it? It was a god. It was the god who pointed out her identity. How can you be sure that it was a god? Your Highness. No matter whether it is true or not, as long as your Majesty intervenes to investigate, you can get the truth. If it is true, she will definitely die. There was no movement on Amónhotep's face. Melitamen was anxious. She grabbed her shoulders regardless of the hierarchy and shook them frantically twice. But she seemed to be a doll without a soul. She kept silent and did not even notice Melitamen's rebellious behavior. In the end, Tuia reacted and pushed the people to the ground. You go back. After a long time, Amónhotep slowly opened his mouth, but the words he uttered made Melitamen unbelievable. Is she driving me away? Does she think I am lying? Your Highness. What I said is true. This is our last chance. Your Highness. Melitamen was like a madman, ignoring all the obstacles and jumping onto the bed, scratching and biting. Enough. Amónhotep shouted, and her expression returned to normal. She looked at Melitamen's face and looked into her eyes. Remember, you can't tell anyone about this. When you walk out of this door, you will forget that you have ever seen such an ashes, and you will also forget that you have been here. Why? Melitamen was stunned. What did she mean? You said Tuia is a Hyksos, so have you ever thought about who your family is? Amónhotep smiled softly. They are harboring the enemy. She will die, but none of you can escape. Her voice floated lightly in the air, but it fell on Melitamen like a heavy hammer, knocking her to the ground. The excitement just now was gone. Harborer. Dry to death in the desert. Do you care about me? She moved the corner of her mouth and looked at the girl who was still so noble even in her illness. If you say so, then so. Amónhotep smiled faintly, as if he acknowledged her concern. But this could only deceive her. As soon as Melitamen left, Amónhotep seemed to have drained all her strength and fell on the cushion, panting slightly. She pointed to the brazier left on the ground and asked Tia, is she really a Hyksos? Tia's face became very strange, and tears filled her eyes. Except when Amónhotep was seriously ill, she never cried even when she was beaten. She took out a piece of paper, wrote and drew, and finally held it in front of Amónhotep. Miss Tia has a very fair complexion and a high nose bridge. She looks like mixed blood. Amónhotep muttered to himself, looking out the window absent-mindedly, as if he was asking Tia, but not like it. Tia nodded heavily. Half-blood Hyksos. Half-blood, she murmured softly, her shoulders shrugged, and after a while she burst into laughter. Hyksos. This is retribution. Everyone with his blood on their hands deserves it. This kingdom hurt him. Now let a Hyksos be your queen. This is the price. The price of killing him. Amónhotep's shoulders shook violently, and he laughed crazily, but as he laughed, tears flowed from the corners of his eyes, big drops. Tia, I miss him so much. She hugged Tia's neck and burst into tears, tears sliding down her cheeks and falling on Tia's shoulders. Why? Why can't they tolerate him? Is status really that important? Is that his original intention? How I want to climb to that highest position, but no matter how high I climb, I can't bring him back. After a while, she cried enough, propped up her body, stumbled down the bed, and leaned on the gorgeous wooden box beside the bed. Her tears soaked the wood drop by drop, and she pressed her face against it, stroking the patterns on it bit by bit with her hands. Did you hear it? Did you hear the sound of the decay of this kingdom? Come and guess who Amónhotep's his? Chapter 198. Awkward Stuck. I'm so tired, Amos. The sun shone through the gaps between the palm trees, casting mottled shadows on Lin Ya's face. Lying on the stone slab that had been exposed to the sun for an entire afternoon, she felt warm and lazy. Who said it wasn't? I'm tired of watching. Fortunately, my wedding won't be so troublesome. Amos lay beside her, turned over lazily, and yawned with satisfaction. In fact, Kemet's wedding has always been very simple. Ordinary people just move there, and there is no need to greet the gods. However, the union of Amónhotep and Lin Ya is destined to be different. Amónhotep is the regent prince. In fact, his current status is only slightly lower than that of the king. This status represents not only the legitimate heir to the king, but also the co-ruler of the current king. One country, two kings. When the elder dies, the prince who takes over will smoothly and seamlessly transition to a stable era, because he has already had experience in ruling. It can be said that if someone calls him Your Majesty now, it is not completely unreasonable. His current position has reached such a high level. His marriage is a major event for the entire kingdom. It must be presented to his people as the most perfect feast. Actually, there are not many parts in the wedding, but there are more scenes of worshipping gods, and some lengthy lines. Lin Ya has been memorizing them for a few days, but she is still stuck every time Tantaman asks. It's not that she is not careful and unwilling to memorize well. She recited it to Amos privately and it went smoothly, but it didn't work when she came to Tantaman. When she thought about facing tens of thousands of citizens of Thebes on the wedding day, she panicked even more. The scene would be so grand. If something went wrong, it would be a loss of face for the royal family. The more she thought about it, the more nervous she became, and the more nervous she became, the more panicked she became. She didn't know how many times Tantaman scolded her with a long face during the whole wedding rehearsal. Amos became nervous with her. I think it may not be that difficult. You don't have to follow what he says so strictly. Amos rolled his eyes and said, think about it, it's nothing more than praising God, praising Amon, praising Horus, praising Hathor, and then praising your husband and making a lifelong vow to him. Just say whatever comes to your mind. It's okay. Anyway, no one will look up at you. Just don't have obvious pauses. What Amos said was not unreasonable, but unfortunately, it didn't go as planned. After taking a break, he came to Tantaman again. When it came to the lines he was going to say, Lin Ya paused shamefully again. Great King of Kings Amon-Ra. Everything is because of you. Oops, because of what did you say? It was just very good. Growth. Growth. Amos was so anxious that she mouthed a reminder behind Tantaman, but the person on the other side didn't realize what she said. Seeing that Tantaman's face was getting darker and darker, Amos was quick-witted. He raised his hands above his head, squatted on the ground, and stood up swayingly. Growth. Growth, do you understand growth? Lin Ya seemed to understand and nodded heavily. She just felt that she could put her mind at ease, but she heard that voice coming solemnly from her ear, almost knocking her out. Holy snake! Holy snake! Tantaman's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He laughed in anger and pulled his old lips. Miss Tikaya, please go back and recite it carefully a few more times. The great Amon-Ra will forgive you. Tantaman was not the only one who was angry. Amos had nothing to say and had no desire to live. What are you thinking? All things become holy snake because of you. On the way back, she became angrier and angrier. She poked Lin Ya's forehead with her fingertips. Didn't you say so? Holy snake. Lin Ya pouted, feeling aggrieved. She also knew that the word didn't make sense. If Amos hadn't been doing the snake dance on the side, she couldn't have said it was the holy snake. Snake dance. Amos laughed angrily, with a sinister smile on his face. How do you think it's a snake dance? Didn't I say growth? Everything grows because of you. The person opposite said something inferior, and Amos thought, forget it. Because Lin Ya stopped talking back and started to imitate her movements just now. Okay, let's call it the holy snake. Praise you, great Amon-Ra. Everything grows because of you, we come because of you, and we are sacred because of you. Praise you, thousands and thousands of years have passed, and you shine on the earth and bring life to all things. Late at night, Lin Ya still didn't sleep. She walked back and forth barefoot on the cold ground, reciting the words for the wedding during the day. The dolls she had found from various places in the temple were scattered all over the ground, staring with eyes, acting as temporary audiences. Amos had been asleep for a long time. He was woken up by her just now. He grumbled in dissatisfaction, and then tilted his head to sleep again. She simply moved all her things to the next room and practiced in the next room. There was no other way. If she didn't sleep, she couldn't prevent others from staying up too. She knew that although Tantaman didn't say anything on the surface, he was actually very anxious in his heart. This matter not only concerns the face of the kingdom, but also the sacred majesty of the Temple of Amon. If she had memorized this set of words, she would have memorized it long ago. As Amos said, it is not that difficult. Many words of praise are universal. It's okay to put them on one by one like nesting dolls, but I don't know why, I get very nervous when it comes to serious things. Amónhotep, the young man loved by the sun god Amon-Ra, he is beautiful, the prince of Upper and Lower Kemet, his strong body. My life is because of him. Lin Ya recited the copy on the manuscript in the empty palace, confessing to the air, and felt her face getting hotter and hotter as she spoke. At this point, she couldn't say anything more. This word is too passionate and unrestrained. Although he is indeed so beautiful. The scene of him wrestling with Thutmose in the Kenchang villa seemed to appear in front of her. His naked chest shone in the sun, and crystal sweat slowly flowed down from the wheat-colored ravines, and finally sank into the delicate mermaid line at his waist. Gulp. Thinking of this, someone couldn't help but feel a tightness in his throat and a little heat in his nose. Color is emptiness, emptiness is color. After repeating it in her mind several times to no avail, she gave up. What are you afraid of? In a few days, you will be a legal couple. Legal. Then, it's okay to think about it in advance. Realizing that the things in her mind have shifted from the initial praise to an unknown direction, she shook her head fiercely, threw away all the mess, and concentrated on reciting the wedding words, but she didn't know what happened. She couldn't recite them at all. My life is because of him. She was stuck on this sentence again. Either she couldn't recite it, or she felt that it would be awkward to confess to the air if he wasn't there. My life is as sweet as honey because of him. My love for him is growing like a flood, but it will never fade. On the fertile soil of my body, the crystallization of love will come as expected. I love him and will always support his decision. I love him more than my life. A low voice came from the high window, and then she finished what she had not finished. Lin Ya looked over in surprise, but only saw the dark sky outside the window. Aksha. Yes, it's me. The voice replied in a low voice. What's wrong with you? Why don't you come in? Your voice is so low. Lin Ya felt a little strange and asked aloud. If he came, shouldn't he come in? Why is he staying outside? Nothing, I caught a cold. Did you forget? We can't meet before marriage. He said, coughing twice. Caught a cold? Is it serious? Yes, he was right. They couldn't meet before marriage, but why did he get sick? This made her worry again. I'm fine. I just came to see you. He smiled softly, with a hint of teasing in his words. I saw you rehearsing today and I can't explain it. See? No, I heard about it. He changed the topic. If we can't meet, you should go back first. It's windy at night. Lin Ya hesitated. She had caught a cold, and it was so cold at night. If her condition worsened, it would be bad. Wait for the next chapter. I'm working hard! Exclamation mark. Chapter 199 Baptism. Well, it's okay. I'm fine now, but my throat still feels uncomfortable. The voice replied, Are you under the wall now? Lin Ya was puzzled. This wall is not just ordinary high, it can be said to be super high. If it is under the wall, how can the sound be heard so clearly? Oh, I'm on the palm tree. Palm tree. She was shocked. How did he climb up so high? A long arm stretched out from the leaves by the window and waved to her twice. Now she believed it. It's okay, you carry yours, I'm wearing thick clothes, I'll stay here with you. Then I'll carry it and you'll go back. Yes. With him by her side, she felt much more at ease, but with him by her side, those embarrassing lines felt a little harder to say. But thinking of his cold body, Lin Ya gritted her teeth and quickly recited it again. Aksha. Aksha. After she finished reciting, she called a few times but no one answered. Only the wind outside the window kept rushing into the room, making her shiver and wrap her clothes tighter. Aksha, are you still there? It's late, it's cold outside, you should go back to sleep. There was still no response. Lin Ya frowned and said loudly, I think he should have gone back. Aksha was very strange today, but she couldn't tell what was strange about him. She shook her head and continued to look at the manuscript in her hand, not thinking about it anymore. Huh? Singer grabbed his collar and pressed his back against the wall. The cold wall made him regain his senses. He didn't know what was wrong, nor why he pretended to be that person. He only knew that this would never happen again. She was about to get married, to the Kemet royal family, whom he hated the most in the world. Do you like her? He didn't know what it felt like to like her. A long time ago, he only felt that the woman was a variable in his life. She escaped from his hands with a method that he couldn't say how smart it was, but he was fooled every time. She was very interesting and a little clever. He admitted this very much. Perhaps only such a woman was suitable to accompany him to take Sinai back from the hateful Kemet people, and then spend this long life. But it might just be company. What is like? Not wanting her to marry someone else is like? No, this is not like. This is just a trophy he wants to have. Having her is like a slap in the face of the Kemet royal family. He had even forgotten the purpose of coming here today. He wanted to possess her, to leave his mark on her before that man, so that the people of Kemet would never forget this shame. But seeing how she looked forward to marriage, he admitted that he was shamefully cowardly. So be it, leave in such a dejected manner, and then come back with news that would stir up a storm in the whole of Kemet a few years later. I hope we can meet again one day. The last day of the year is the birthday of Nephthys, the goddess of death, and one of the grandest festivals in Kemet. The days before this were the birthdays of Osiris, Horus, Isis and other gods. However, the bustle outside seemed to have nothing to do with the entire temple. It was still dead silent inside. It couldn't be said to be dead silent. This was a day to have fun with the people. The main characters had already returned to the palace, such as Amos, Nefertari and other royal family members. Even Amónhotep, who was still recovering from his illness, had returned to prepare for the evening event. But Tantamon hadn't done it yet. The reason was simple. The day before marrying the prince, the future princess had to undergo the last step, which Amónhotep had promised, the baptism of faith. The maids lined up in a long row, waiting for her bath to finish. The lake water was not very cold, but became warm after being scalded by the sun for a whole morning. Lin Ya sat on a foundation stone under the water, soaking in the lake water, yawning from sleepiness. Her chin touched the water little by little, and she became more awake. What time is it? She paused and looked up and asked. This was a part of the baptism ceremony. All the steps that should be done had been completed in the morning. Only the holy lake baptism and the oath were left. According to Tantamon, it should be soaked for a full hour. But the water was too comfortable, making people sleepy and confused. Go back to your highness, it will be ready soon. The leading maid looked up at the sundial on the side and responded respectfully. Although they have not yet married, they have already started to call each other like this. Oh. Lin Ya responded hesitantly. On the other side of the holy lake, A hippopotamus was yawning, and its short tail made a snapping sound on the skin. She was a little dazed. Hippopotamus? Legend has it that it was the hippopotamus in the holy lake of Thebes that made King Theo decide to overthrow the Hyksos. Apophis said that the hippopotamus kept calling day and night, disturbing his sleep and making His Majesty Theo feel insulted. Lin Ya certainly thought this matter was very mysterious and was just an excuse by Apophis, but how could this hippopotamus not call for such a long time? If it had called, she would not be so sleepy. An hour passed quickly, and she climbed out of the lake and let the maids dry her with a large clean cloth. Then she put on a very simple headdress, which was considered the end of this part. The next thing to do was to walk to the square outside the temple, where Tantaman was waiting for her. The last part of her baptism was to swear in front of the people that she would be loyal to the god Amon forever. This part was originally conducted in front of the god Amon indoors, but because she had no past as a priest in the temple and her identity was so special, so the ceremony was changed to be witnessed by the people. The queen of the next king is a faithful believer of the god Amon, and the relationship between the temple of Amon and the royal family is inseparable. A long team of maids followed behind her, and there were 4 in front and behind, fanning and holding incense, all the way to the gate. Just halfway through, Lin Ya's head twitched and she made a very incredible move. She felt that the hippos were a little too honest and didn't make a sound. She was curious and wanted to hide her. When she passed by, she kicked a small stone by the lake and it flew up and landed on a hippo. The hippo looked up, half opened his eyes, and then closed them again, patted his butt with his tail, and ignored her. She smacked her lips and continued to walk forward. This action was very rude, but fortunately it was not big and no one noticed her. The sun was blazing brightly, and the midday sun was hanging high in the sky. It was the energetic Amon-Ra. Lin Ya lifted a corner of her skirt and walked respectfully to Tantaman. She walked up from one side of the square, and the crowd was watching the people who were preparing to participate in the festival and witness the baptism of the future princess. Amos came back at some point, and also stood in the middle of the square, standing behind Nefertari, who had also returned to represent the royal spokesperson. He saw her coming and blinked from a distance. Praise you, Amon-Ra, who gives spirituality to all things. Here she comes, walking in your sunlight. Here she comes, washing away the dust and sins around her body in your holy lake. Tantaman's hymn came to an end when Lin Ya walked in front of him. She knelt in front of Tantaman and recited the hymn she had memorized long ago. Behind her were tens of thousands of Kemet people. She felt like she was on pins and needles and her throat was tight, but she understood that such a ceremony was not much easier than tomorrow's wedding. I come, walking in your sunlight. Here I come, washing away the dust and sins around my body in your living lake. I walk in your daylight and bathe in your sunshine. It is you who gives me the power of life and growth. I am your devout believer, walking towards your omnipresent day. I love you, just as you give me life. I will live for you, wield a sharp sickle for you, and kill all sins. Praise you, omnipresent Amon-Ra. As the last syllable fell, Amos's heart suddenly fell, and he wiped the sweat from his palms with his wide sleeves. Although his voice was a little tense, wasn't it said very well? Lin Ya lowered her head, looking particularly pious, and every time she spoke, Tantaman would pick up a piece of jewelry from the maid's tray and put it on her. Headband, necklace, earrings, pendant, bracelet. When all the words were said, she also took the last item from Tantaman's hand, the sacrificial staff. The baptism ended here, and from this moment on, she was one of the priests of the god Amon. There may be more chapters later, but it's just a possibility, but I don't know when it will be. You can wait until tomorrow to read it, because I have to pack up. So I'm not sure when it will be posted. Chapter 200 Before Marriage. A hippopotamus ran out of the baptism of the future princess and pushed the high priest Tantaman out of the square. This was really terrible. The onlookers said later, do you think the high priest treated the group of hippos in the holy lake harshly? Or did the high priest do something wrong and the goddess Tavrai wanted to punish him? People sighed as they left the scene. Tantaman's face turned black. PFFT, why did the hippopotamus push Tantaman and not others? After the baptism, Amos pulled Lin Ya and whispered, and the smile in his eyes could not be stopped. Maybe it likes Lord Tantaman very much? Lin Ya felt guilty and opened her mouth. She didn't dare to say that it was because she was impatient that the hippopotamus came to settle the score. As for why Tantaman was unlucky, it might be because he was standing in front of her. But this is good, after all, It is better to let a friend die than to let the poor monk die than to push her and embarrass the royal family. Thinking of the hippopotamus opening its mouth, pulling a piece of robe directly from Tantamon, smearing his saliva all over him, and squeezing him into the crowd, Lin Ya shuddered. Fortunately, when will Rhea come to pick you up? Amos looked up at the sky and asked casually. Lin Ya should be married from her own family. The completion of today's baptism means that the course of the temple is over, and it's time to go home. I don't know, but I guess she will come in a while. Lin Ya sighed and said faintly. She really didn't want to go back. Who would want to go back to see Circa and Melitamon's faces? It's better to be anywhere than to go back, but fortunately it's the last day. Speak of the devil appeared, and a recliner was carried in front of the temple square. Rhea's housekeeper was standing respectfully on the side. Seeing her, he bowed and saluted, waiting for her arrival. Then I'll go back first. See you in the evening. The last night before the wedding was the last carnival before the wedding. Lin Ya had no other friends and only invited Amos. She would come at night and spend the night with Lin Ya. She would return to the palace with the bride in the evening of the next day. But such a day was a bit troublesome. The date chosen for the wedding coincided with a flood festival, and the pre-wedding carnival coincided with the birthday of the goddess Nephthys. As a member of the royal family, Amos had to attend. I hope the carnival in the evening will not last too long so that she can go to Lin Ya earlier. After saying hello to Amos, Lin Ya reluctantly went to the chair. The hot wind was blowing and the sun was shining in the sky, but there were more people on the street than usual. There was no veil on the chair to block the sun. At Ipe's reminder, Lin Ya retracted her eyes and looked around. She honestly covered her face and exposed neck and shoulders with a layer of veil. She was going to be a bride and couldn't be sunburned at this time. This made Lin Ya quite regretful. She said she came to the capital, but she didn't have a good look around. As soon as the wedding was over tomorrow, she would return to Memphis with her husband Amónhotep. After all, that was where he should stay. The people there had been waiting for him for a long time. The husband was no longer a fiancé, but a husband. She repeated this word several times on her lips and tongue. After a brief panic, she felt a little sweet again. It was great. The people she faced when she returned to Rhea Manor were much calmer than Lin Ya had imagined. Both Circa and Melitamon were quite honest. There was no hostility from before, especially Circa. Her face was cold and indifferent. She didn't have any extra expression when she saw Lin Ya coming back. She didn't even bother to pretend to be kind, but she didn't do anything out of the ordinary. She just treated the other person like air. Melitamon, on the other hand, could feel the jealousy in her eyes from a distance, but she was suppressing her anger. When Lin Ya walked past her, she had an extremely aggrieved and resentful look, and a kind of indescribable pride. However, this had nothing to do with Lin Ya, and she would not care about these things, because Melitamon could not cause any trouble at all. I directed people to pack all the things in the house and put them away. The items were taken one by one, and the whole house was empty for more than half in an instant. In fact, Lin Ya herself did not have much. Most of the new additions here were sent by Amónhotep and had been packed and boxed long ago. What was being packed now were the parts that Herod left for his daughter. A wooden box was moved in front of Lin Ya. She looked at the blurred lines on it, paused, and then spoke lightly, directing people to put it back. Forget it, put down everything that belongs to Mud in this room, except those books. She had just moved in recently. Before that, Tidian never entered this room. Maybe the memories left by this room were not very good. But when she moved in, this room seemed as if its owner had never left for more than 10 years. There were fresh flowers in the pottery vase beside the bed, and a half-unrolled paper roll was placed on it. There was half a cup of water left in the quilt. It seemed that someone had just sat there, flipping through the books, took a sip of the water in the cup, and put it back to concentrate on reading. There was no dust on every inch of the floor tiles, and every relic had different degrees of wear and tear, as if someone often came to clean it, and as if someone often touched these things. But in her dream, it was clearly not like this. Herod was very sick and didn't even have the strength to get up. The room was even more dusty, which was not conducive to the patient's cultivation. There was no need to think of anyone else who would do this, it would only be Rhea. Lin Ya felt that Rhea was a pitiful and hateful person. He did not love her well when she was alive, and showed such a deep affection after her death. But the ownership of these relics should be left in the original place. The door panel rang a few times. She looked up and saw Rhea standing at the door, watching the people in the room moving things back and forth. He looked very vicissitudes. He was wearing the dress he was going to wear on the night of Nephthys' carnival, but he seemed to have lost a lot of weight. The clothes could not hold up and hung on his body empty. The belt was tied tightly, and the clothes were wrinkled. His eyes were not as bright as before, and the whole person seemed to have been drained of his soul. It seemed that he had recovered to the way he should be at his age in a few days. When he saw her looking at him, he opened his mouth, wanting to say something but stopped. Yeah. Tia. Lin Ya smiled and reminded. She was not Tia. Even if Rhea really regretted it, she could not forgive him on behalf of Tia. He had given up the identity of a father for too long, and had neglected his duties for too long. No matter how many difficulties he had, he could not make up for a life that was ruined by him. It's Tia, listen to me. If one day you meet a man named Kemet, no matter what he says to you, please stay away from him. Rhea hesitated for a moment, ran over a few steps, stood in front of her, very close to her, with some panic in his eyes, and said stumblingly, the word Kemet came out of his mouth, and his voice was particularly light, but he was afraid that she couldn't hear it, so he moved a little closer. Her breath reached Rhea's nose, making his eyes red in an instant, but he covered it up well. This is his child, the only child of him and Horus, but he has never hugged him since he was born. His hands moved, as if he wanted to satisfy his desire as a father, but finally fell silent. Kemet? Who is he? Lin Ya was puzzled, but seeing his nervous look, she also whispered the name. A person whose name cannot be mentioned. If one day someone comes looking for you and tells you that his name is Kemet, then no matter what he says, you must not believe it. Rhea warned carefully, if he asks you, you must say that your mud is Circa. A few days ago, he heard the news of Kemet's return. Someone found Kemet's whereabouts in the country. That man is a lunatic. He can do anything for the Hyksos. If he knows that Tia married the regent prince, he will definitely seduce her to do something bad. However, if he fails, he will not care about any blood relationship. He will be the biggest stumbling block on Ya's road to a stable life. He will destroy everything. Circa? Are you crazy? How could I tell others that my mud is Circa? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.